In my past life, I was a brilliant leader, assassinated by political factions. To my surprise, after kicking the bucket, I was reincarnated as a goblin named Gem. But my luck was rotten. I ended up as the lowest of the low in the goblin tribe. Every day, Gem had to grind like a beast, working from dawn till dusk, yet still, I could barely afford to eat. If you didn't hit your KP, you'd get beaten to a pulp by the guards with shock prods, while the high and mighty nobles just kept exploiting us, sitting pretty without lifting a finger. As a modern man who knows the ideals of Master Zosi, there's no way I can just accept that here. Because our bodies are so weak, my sister and I are constantly bullied by other goblins. Among them, there's one brat who's the worst, constantly shaking us down and stealing from us. That brat is Jack. Sure enough, it wasn't long before Jack used some excuse to bring his lackeys to squeeze Gem for more. But this time, Gem was super calm and used his talk no jutsu to tell him that even if he keeps doing this, he won't be able to rob much anyway, especially since he has to pay protection money to the bosses above. So why don't you guys try hunting monsters instead? If you risk it, you get the reward. The simple-minded goblins found that logic surprisingly sound, and just like that, Gem became the strategist for the goblin pack. He laid out an incredibly detailed plan. There's a giant blind centipede in the mine that relies solely on sound to determine its target. You can't attack it head-on with these piece-of-crap weapons because its armor is too thick. My plan is to lure it into the acid pit and force it down there. Everyone will spread out, dig along the passage, and take turns tossing bones to grab its attention. But someone needs to lure it into the acid pit because it won't just walk in on its own. That sneaky jerk Jack wanted to use me as the bait, but my sister Rosa stood up to protect Gem. He's still in pain, let me go instead. Obviously, Gem wasn't going to let his sister walk into danger. I confidently took the mission as bait and told Jack, "You make sure you block the door when I get back." Actually, I knew full well that this dog was planning to pull a use someone up and toss them aside move. But the kid is still green and naive. I'd already read him like a book. Over here, the monster is showing off its shiny front fangs. That is one hell of a bite. If you get hit by that, you're not just going to the afterlife, you'll be mangled for life. Gem started giving instructions if the monster gets close throw bones to lure it away. Sam, you're in charge of leading it into the tunnel and rolling the ball. Sam was annoyed and asked, "Why, always me?" Suddenly, the guy next to him tapped his shoulder. "If you're always bragging about your speed, then prove it. Don't move until you hear our signal. We'll lure it to the acid pit, and Jack will help me lock it in." Clear. When Jack heard that, he actually praised me, saying, "Even an idiot like you came up with a decent plan." And so, a moment later, the whole gang started working. Sam was sneaking around behind a rock, watching the centipede's movements, when it suddenly lunged toward him, scaring the poor kid half to death. He scrambled to get away, and after running for his life to a pile of bones, Sam grabbed a bone and hurled it at the monster. Sam was so terrified he squeezed his eyes shut, waiting for death. But after a while, he didn't feel anything. Turns out the centipede heard the noise and moved away, without devouring the kid. At the same time, on the other side, Jack was standing by keeping watch. Gem signaled that the centipede was coming. Jack secretly thought that after getting rid of the centipede, he'd finish me off too to take all the credit. Just then, Gem tapped a bone against the ground. Even the centipede was startled and glanced toward the deep, dark cave, and then in just a few seconds the giant centipede noticed them and roared as it charged. However, Jack wasn't afraid. He just chuckled and smashed his bone against the other side, making it shatter. "There you go, Gem. Get it in the acid pit, and I'll lock you both in. It'll kill you, then the acid will finish it off." But things didn't go as planned. The centipede suddenly stopped and stared, right at Jack, scaring the living daylights out of him. Suddenly, the hero Gem appeared to draw its attention and shouted, "Jack, run, we'll lure it in." So Jack used every ounce of strength that his mother gave him to run for his life toward the pit, wondering why the monster wasn't chasing the sound. Gem urged him, "Hurry, get in." And as soon as he and the centipede ran, Inside, I cleverly went over and locked the door. It turns out everything was according to Jem's plan. You idiot! If you're going to scheme, try not to be so obvious next time. Just then, the others ran over. Where's Jack? Jem thanked the gods I'm still alive. Jem put on a face like he'd lost his life savings. I'm sorry I made a noise so it chased me. It fell into the pit, but Jack got caught too, so I had to lock them both in. Listen, I don't want any reward. Tell the supervisor I killed Jack, and I'll just express my final respects to the sacrifice of Jack like this. The gods witnessed Jack's bravery, so they believed him instantly. You're amazing, Jem. We won't forget you. I'll just take my sister and go. May the gods bless you. And just like that, after they left, my sister whispered, What's the truth? Did Jack really sacrifice himself? I brushed it off and replied, Well, maybe just bad luck. It seems the centipede doesn't just follow sound but smell too. Who knows? She didn't ask further. Right meeting. Karma is no surprise. They left, but the doubt in her eyes couldn't be washed away. Cut to scene Rosa urging Jem, What's wrong? Eat. A fat beetle was lying on the plate. I just couldn't swallow this food. Seriously, Rosa, She still insisted, Come on, Jem, it's your favorite, I even saved your share. Jem pushed the plate away. Rosa, I can't. But Rosa stabbed the beetle with a knife, insisting Jem do as she said. I reluctantly agreed just to end it. Jem brought the beetle to his mouth and clamped his lips shut to keep from making a sound. Jem's eyes showed pure horror. I couldn't eat this disgusting thing. Jem looked at her with a pathetic expression. Rosa. She gripped the knife in her hand. I knew it. After the acid pit incident, I knew you weren't Jem, right? You are a demon. Even though I tried to explain, Rosa put the knife down. You're not a demon. You can prove it. It seems Rosa didn't quite believe me. Try it. Jem was a bit flustered. Then I suddenly remembered something. Maroon powder. She didn't understand what Jem meant. What? I have a way to prove the truth. That maroon powder we got last year mixed with holy water according to the principles I mentioned, it should expel a demon, right? If I catch fire, then your brother is just a little crispy. If nothing happens, you have to believe me. Okay? Rosa hesitated a bit. I don't know. I didn't hesitate to try it immediately. All right, let's do it. Wait, let me check. Jem immediately sprinkles some powder into the cup. I want to be sure she won't break her word. Once I drink this, you have to believe me. I'm not a devil, okay, Rosa? Rosa keeps clutching the knife, speaking little, but doing much. Despite feeling panicked inside, Jem remains outwardly calm, hoping this exorcism of sorts is just superstition, or else I'm done for. Jem's gaze shifts, and she can't help but feel anxious. Jem, so is it a demon? It turns out Jem is complaining that the drink tastes strange and awful. Rosa, frustrated, punches him straight in the face. Jem, you idiot! Jem is overjoyed, calling out, Jem, see, you believe me now, right? She stops, overthinking. It's really Jem. He goes back to rambling aimlessly. I am who I am, a dreamer across worlds. Rosa can only manage a weary smile. The hacker. Of all people, you had to pick the slacker god, didn't you? Jem talks comfortably with her. What can I say? I like being lazy. Rosa is still questioning existence. She believes he is her Jem now, but lately, you've been so strange. Ever since you recovered, you're like a different person. This time I'm telling the truth. Can you listen? Jem carefully considers his words. His father had said something like this once. Maybe talking to Rosa would make it easier to figure out. Jem calmly sits down at the dining table. He admits the truth, he has memories from another life. Even he has to be skeptical. He doesn't truly know what he is. It feels like drifting in a void. Then my body felt like it was swept away by a river into a field of light. After touching that light, I woke up with a headache, and these foreign memories, Jem. He recounts everything he can remember. That's all I know, I swear to you. She jumps up onto the table. Good heavens, do you know what that means, Gem? Since ancient times, gods and their warriors have been reincarnated in mortal bodies. They possess powers far beyond imagination, from superhuman strength and irresistible charisma to the ability to alter reality. After hearing that story, Gem is a bit skeptical, pointing at himself. So do you think I'm one of those chosen ones? Rosa isn't sure either, hesitantly asking, right? I mean, has it been a long time since one appeared? Do you have any special abilities? Gem rests his chin on his hand, listing what he can think of. You mean, can I run faster than an arrow, be stronger than a herd of horses, or jump over a chasm in a single bound? Things like that. Hearing this, she nods, indicating those are exactly the kinds of abilities. Rosa excitedly asks, so do you have them? Gem shakes his head firmly. No. Hearing the answer, she hesitates a bit and replies, well, never mind. Maybe you're just a lost soul. Rosa explains, lost souls are people born with a second memory, but no powers. Very few of them achieve fame unless they inherit the memories of great leaders or legendary craftsmen. After understanding what a lost soul means, there is a hint of sadness in his voice. So I am, really just a lost soul. Sorry for disappointing you. Hearing that, her expression darkens, and she says in a weary tone, no, thank the gods. We don't need another chosen one. Rosa, a bit nervous, gestures for silence, warning Gem, but please don't tell anyone about this. If the overseers find out you have the secret to the treasure, do you know what will happen? His face turns serious. I'll be tortured to death or used for experiments, right? Hearing those harsh words, she quickly covers his mouth, shouting in fear, stop, I don't want to hear anymore. If you actually have any special abilities, Gem, please never let them show. Gem crosses his arms, looking at Rosa's fearful expression. His voice is full of confidence. Don't worry, I'm not stupid. I'd still like to keep all 10 of my fingers and toes. She places a plate of food on the table, her voice full of worry. If anyone saw you use your powers, I don't know what would happen. Hearing this, Gem imagines the scene where, if some goblin discovered his secret, he would immediately make that guy vanish. Just thinking about it, he feels a bit uneasy. Breaking into a cold sweat, Gem confusedly says, yeah, I don't know either. He walks over and stands beside the table. He looks at Rosa and whispers, that's why I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to make you worry more. These words of Gem's make her heart feel a bit more at ease. She replies gently, I understand. Rosa turns, wondering, then, whose memories do you carry? You act like an aristocrat, but you don't seem arrogant at all. Hearing that, he suddenly remembers the past. Gem's gaze flickers with sadness, his voice filled with regret. No, I'm not an aristocrat. These memories belong to another life in a different society. He was a rebel, someone who tried to make his society better. She wipes her hands with a cloth and continues asking, what happened to him? He almost slips up, but manages to stop in time. Ah, he made a mistake. Gem remembers the previous memories. He recounts how he was assassinated by the aristocrats who opposed what he was trying to do. Hearing this, Rosa quietens down a bit and says, I understand. Suddenly, she changes the subject. Are you not planning to do anything to oppose the blue coats? Hearing that question from Rosa, Gem smirks. Do you think I'm that stupid? As soon as he finishes, she looks at Gem with judgmental eyes. Seeing that expression, he looks away, his voice awkward. Well, that's true. Gem explains why he isn't opposing the blue coats, but no. I'm not a warrior with weapons or armor, and I don't have an army or mages under my command, so I don't think I'll be overthrowing anyone. Sounding a bit confused, she asks back, mages. What are those? He gently explains, those who use magic like mages, but with more methods. They are less involved with spirits and focus on magical energy more. Listening to the explanation from Gem, Rosa's face shows astonishment. You talk as if you understand magic. Just then, she realizes something is not right and asks back, "Wait, you don't know magic, do you?" He points at himself, questioning Rosa back, "Can you feel me using magic?" Based on what she felt earlier, it makes Rosa a bit confused, stammering, "No, I don't think so." Jem pulls up a chair and says in a calm tone, "Then don't go jumping to conclusions. If I knew how to use magic, wouldn't you have felt it already? That's why they keep us here, right? The Boge tribe can feel it. Being gifted with magic due to our lineage is useful, but it also makes us easily replaceable, wouldn't you say?" She had no choice but to accept that, and replied, "That's true." Suddenly, Rosa called out to him, her expression darkening and her voice heavy with concern. "Promise me one thing, okay?" He still didn't understand why Rosa was acting like this, and asked, "What is it?" She looked at him with sincere eyes, her lips pressed together, and pleaded in a desperate tone, "Please don't change anymore, okay?" Suddenly, he reached out his hand and said softly, "Come here." Unexpectedly, he pulled Rosa into a tight hug, leaving her stunned and confused. "What's going on?" He held her firmly and said in a gentle voice, "I promise no matter what happens, I will always be your brother." Scene transition. Rose petals drift gently in the breeze. He suddenly woke up on a hospital bed. He raised his hand to shield his eyes from the sunlight streaming in, looking around in bewilderment, and muttered in disbelief, Where am I?" Brutus, seeing him awake and about to do something, rushed over to stop him. Hey, don't move around too much. You have a chest wound, and your condition is still critical." Flashback to the previous episode. Upon waking, he saw the person in front of him. In disbelief, he gasped the name Brutus. Hearing that he was still recognized, Brutus smiled with a hint of arrogance. "It is I." He still couldn't understand what had happened, so he raised a hand to his forehead and questioned himself. "Was it all just a dream?" Rosa asked. "What did you dream about?" He let out a loud laugh and replied, "You wouldn't believe it." He lay there on the bed, saying with a half-joking, half-serious tone, "A chaotic dream about the afterlife, and I even became a slave." A deep red rose beside the bed seemed to hint at something. He eagerly recounted what he had experienced in the dream. "I wasn't even human. Imagine that." She looked at him with an incredulous expression and said, "That's insane." He had anticipated that, so he wasn't too surprised. He calmly said, "I know, right? Give me a hand, you two. I need to get out of this bed, and get to the council right now." As soon as he finished his sentence, he suddenly saw his hands turn into goblin hands, and the scene before him began to blur. His expression changed to one of shock. He was frozen in silence for a few minutes. The joy that had just lit up his eyes suddenly went hollow. He looked coldly at his goblin hands and muttered in a sad, disappointed voice, "This is a dream, isn't it?" Brutus, feeling awkward and choked up, replied, "I'm sorry, my friend. There's nothing we can do." Their eyes couldn't hide the sadness and disappointment. He hesitated. I missed you both so much." Rosa's face also showed sadness at not being able to stand by his side, and she said in a regretful tone, "We missed you too. You will live well in this new life, won't you? Promise me." Hearing that, he couldn't stay dejected forever. He lifted his spirits and smiled, replying, with a confident tone, "I will. You can count on me." Before fading away completely, the two left him with a final piece of advice with absolute trust. "Please, help me change this world for the better." He laughed softly and said, "Is that even a question? More than anyone, you two must know that I will shake this world, I to its very core." Suddenly, Brutus pointed to the side and said, "We will come back to visit you, my friend." His gaze landed on Jem. Brutus continued, "But now, he will accompany you." Jem looked at him with an unfocused gaze. He frowned, his voice a bit annoyed. "Jem, really, couldn't it be someone less annoying, Jem? walked from the head of the bed toward him. He looked at him with a distasteful gaze, and sensing that his words had hurt, Jem yelled angrily, "Hey, I have feelings, you know." He glanced over and asked, "So you're still here, right?" Jem shrugged and said in a mocking tone, "Of course. This is my body after all." He said seriously, "Sorry, Jem, but a team can only have one leader. You need to rest for a while." He pointed at himself, protesting, "But this is my body after all." He nodded with a small smile and said softly, "And I will take good care of it. But we both know you can't change your life, and I can." Hearing his words, Jem's gaze turned pensive and hesitant. I guess that's true." Suddenly, he reached out and patted his shoulder. He looked at Jem with a firm gaze and offered encouragement. "Stay optimistic, Jem. You will be remembered for a long time." Hearing that, he pleaded, "Can you do one thing for me? Please be sincere with my sister. I don't want to see her hurt." He replied with a tone full of confidence, "I've never had a sister, but I will take care of her like my own flesh and blood. I promise you that. I will make this world a better place." Suddenly, a hint of sadness flashed in his eyes, and his voice became hesitant. "For you and her." Hearing his certainty, Jem smiled brightly, and replied, "Then I will put my faith in you, Leb. Thank you." He quickly responded with a grateful tone, "No, but Jem, thank you." A rose petal fell. The flow of time changed once more. Dawn broke over the mountain ranges, beginning a new day. Scene transition. Jem and Rosa walked to some place. There, he saw his own kind. She pushed his arm gently and said in a teasing tone, "I can't believe you woke up before me this morning and even cleaned and made breakfast. Were you a servant in your past life?" Hearing that, Jem frowned and cleared his throat. Rosa laughed with a mischievous look and replied, "Just kidding. I won't tease you about those things anymore." Suddenly, from behind them, someone called out his name loudly. "Hey, Jem!" Both were startled and turned back. After they turned around, they saw it was Kui, who walked over to greet them with surprise. "Surprise, surprise! I thought you were dead." Rosa was visibly happy and called out, "Kui." Jem also smiled, responding to Kui's joke. "Not yet, and it won't be anytime soon as long as I have strength left." She excitedly ran over, chirping to tell him what had happened. "Sir, you won't believe what happened yesterday. Do you know Jack from Group 3? He's looking for Jem," and, seeing how close Rosa was to Kui in his mind, he recalled Kui's background. Kui was a supervisor, a friend of Jem and Rosa's father. He had taken care of the two since their parents passed away 2 years ago during an attack by the Hippling horde. It was strange to see a supervisor so close to slaves, but there are good people everywhere. Suddenly, she asked Jem, "Is it true you helped take down the centipede?" Jem shrugged and replied with an obvious tone, "I was just faster than them." Hearing the answer, he laughed loudly and said, "That's Jem for you. I knew no one could run faster than you." Kui began assigning work to both of them. "Listen, that's good. I don't want to have to waste time pointing out your laziness. There's a lot of work to do today. Rosa, the mushroom farm needs you, and you, Jem." Both stood at attention to receive today's tasks. Scene transition. A long line of slave-class goblins stood in formation, each holding tools for mineral excavation. Over there, Kiki was whispering, plotting something evil. Then he claimed he had no points, but he had a little sister, and he said it with such a smirking, mocking tone that we accept all kinds of payment, and then he suddenly stopped. Jack's hand gripped Kiki's neck forcefully. He used his strength to slam Kiki's head straight into the ground, making him cough up strawberry syrup. Jack's eyes were filled with rage, his voice hoarse and deep. Deep down lay a terrifying threat. "I already said it, no women." Kiki, scared, stammered with a trembling voice, "I'm sorry, I... Jack continued, "You're with us. You don't buy, and you don't sell to them." Vet stepped forward, reaching out a hand to intervene. Jack, let him go. If he gets hurt, the supervisors will interrogate us." Hearing that, Jack said nothing, looking at him with an icy gaze. It was as if his eyes were saying, "Keep your filthy mouth shut." Seeing that look from Jack, Vet froze, his lips pressed lightly, his eyes showing a bit of wariness. Jack let go of Kiki, who knelt on the ground, coughing up pools of strawberry syrup with a pained expression. Jack turned around, dropping a threat. "Next time I'll throw you to the goblins." Vet sat down next to Kiki and said softly, "Sorry about that. Big brother is very strict about women. His father died early and his mother had to take extra jobs to support the family." Hearing that, he was a bit curious. "She passed away." Vet recalled Jack's past and muttered, "Right. There was a dark stain. It could be cured, but it needed points. Big brother tried to save up points to treat her, but all the old customers avoided him." He looked at the green goblins and said, "No green one would dare admit they were ever intimate with a gray one." Vet looked at Jack's face, which was filled with resentment. Vet spoke up, reminding him, "Big brother is still bitter about that." He walked over to Jack and hesitantly advised him, "Big brother, you have to stop. If you can't control yourself, I will lose more men to VG." Jack turned back and asked about Kiki. "Did you explain the rules to him earlier?" Vet immediately affirmed firmly, "Yes, I told all of them. They can steal or run away as much as they want, but they must not touch the women." At this moment, he also explained why there were guys like Kiki. They know, but they're men, right? There isn't enough blood to fuel both heads at the same time. He didn't bother listening to what Vet had just said. Jack held his ground decisively, saying, "I don't need that filth in my gang." To handle VG, Vet hurriedly spoke up to defend Kiki. "Big brother, don't be like that. Let it go. Without men, there is no gang, and we've already fallen behind VG." Just then, he looked at VG, his eyes showing a bit of disdain. As he said, "Look there, that's your favorite bug." He turned back, and just then, on his side, it seemed like he was having trouble with the others. Vet saw VG standing up to protect the weak and was a bit surprised, thinking, "Where did this bug get the guts?" He was a bit puzzled. "I've never understood why you hate that kid so much." Jack said nothing, but there was something hard to explain in his eyes. Seeing the way he stood up to protect others at this moment made Jack a bit conflicted. He recalled Vet's appearance when he was young, being bullied by others, his scared appearance, sobbing loudly when Vet was about to take a beating from the bullies. He just knew to squeeze his eyes shut, hands clutching the food to his chest, ready to be pummeled. Bitom. But Vet waited, and nothing happened. He summoned the courage to open one eye to look, and the face in front of Vet at that moment became full of surprise. The young Vet had dealt with the small fries bullying him in the blink of an eye. He reached out to help him stand up, while simultaneously helping Vet escape the bullies. But after that, I don't know what happened that made Jack realize the saying, "Doing good deeds is often met with retribution." I learned that the day I helped Vet. Continuing from the previous part, Jack recounts the past when he and Vet were still close brothers. Vet wasn't like me, but we were still brothers. Over the years they grew up together. Whatever Jack had, he had, but until one day, everything came to an end. A gray goblin army appeared. According to his story, during the annual expedition to the deep levels to destroy the goblins and other strange beasts, Vet and I went to the vanguard with VG and his soldiers. The goblins thought we would die for them, but I trained my men to keep them alive. They faced the spider monsters. Everyone worked together to create a glorious victory. Going inside, he and Vet saw a dazzling light like a forest inside the cave. The trees grew everywhere. The gray goblin army slowly moved inside. While we were setting up camp, they split into scouting teams. My group was sent the farthest, to the nearby lake, while VG went to the other side of the cave. Despite his worries, on Jack's face was excitement for being allowed to be on the front lines. Knowing I had to go to the most dangerous place, Vet asked to go with me. Because he wanted Vet to be safe, he sent him with another side. I wanted him to be safe, so I agreed immediately. Not outside Jack's predictions, and I was right. A swarm of goblins ambushed us, forcing us to open a path to run. After that attack, everyone was injured, not the few, and the sensitivity, as well as the alertness around also became more tense. Scene change at this moment, he seemed to see something very terrifying, making Jack's face become panicked mixed with surprise. Gon's group was massacred. Vet had completely disappeared. One of them discovered something from behind a bush, and when he went to check, Jack saw a small footprint. Immediately, he led his group rushing like an arrow toward the footprints left in the mud. I don't care who caught him. I just want my brother back. When he arrived, Jack saw a gray goblin with a physique identical to Vet's. He was heartbroken, unable to believe his eyes. Jack slowly stepped forward to check, but before he could check the condition of his wounds with his keen senses, Jack noticed something rushing quickly toward him. Without a single wasted movement, he easily caught the spear. Jack's eyes at this moment became furious, teeth gritting. He used his arm strength to snap the spear. On the other side, VG brought his people, gesturing to surround them. We were outnumbered 2-1, but my soldiers knew how to fight, while they did not. One swing of the axe was enough to make those small fries shatter like that spear just now. His eyes suddenly shifted direction. At this moment, he and his troops charged forward heroically, his face showing rage. His eyes widened, looking at them without a trace of fear. Suddenly he felt a stinging pain in his side, his abdomen. VG fell along with a wound leaking strawberry syrup. His eyes were filled with shock. VG slowly looked up. He could hardly believe that the one who backstabbed him was none other than Vet. I am so stupid and blind. The Grey Goblin army formed a defensive formation. Inside, suddenly one jumped up high in his hand holding a spear. He threw it strongly outward, hitting one of the enemy troops. After throwing, he landed steadily on the ground, looking behind as if seeing something. He panicked. He hurriedly called his teammates and pointed toward that direction. VG knelt before VG. Vet was in his hand, loudly threatening, "Stop. If you want him to live, then stop." Those under Jack's command hesitated, and Jack, restrained, watched in disappointment, struggling to ask him why. Vet sneered and replied, "Sorry, Jack, being friends with you never got me the life I wanted. Verger offered a better deal." Stuttering, he said, "But we're brothers." Vet's eyes turned dangerous. He snarled, "Brothers? Do you really think so? In your memories you sat on a throne, letting girls surround you while someone served you. I sat hidden among the crowd." He thought bitterly. "Everything was easy for you women, friends, power, while I could only live in your shadow, but then I realized I had something precious, something everyone craves, but few have your trust. And I used it to get what I really wanted." Vet went to negotiate with Verger. He pointed his weapon toward you. Returning to reality, Vet mocked him. "Don't worry, Jack. I'll tell your sister you died saving the group from a pack of goblins." He leaned close to his ear and asked, "She'll be so grateful, you know, and she has such a beautiful body." For a moment, the image turned black and white, and Jack's silhouette appeared clearly with an axe. He laughed maniacally. Sensing something wrong with Jack, Vet suddenly backed away. Verger, behind all this malice, said, "Only a fool brags before the opponent is dead. Stop this nonsense and finish him off." Vet rubbed his hands, flustered. "I thought you'd enjoy delivering the final blow yourself, sir." Verger ignored him and continued, preaching. "A warrior dying at the hands of a traitor sounds like an epic poem, don't you think?" Vet heard him and hesitated, affirming his words. "Of course, sir." Saying that, he raised his knife. "Goodbye, Jack. Don't worry, I'll be a good friend and treasure everything you leave behind." Jack suddenly grabbed the staff, swung it up, revealing a sharp axe blade. With one strike, he severed Vet's hands. His eyes showed pure brutality, his voice filled with rage. "I'll deal with you later." Jack lunged at the two nearby goblins, sending them into a panic one after another, screaming, "Boss, what do we do?" Boss, killing intent radiated from Jack. He slashed wildly. He had handed him over to me. The old men on the enemy side looked terrified. With Verger gone, his minions scattered like dust before Jack's group. Shortly after Jack dragged Vet to a place where he wouldn't stop whining, "Jack, buddy, please spare me. I was forced. If I refused, they would have killed everyone I care about." Hearing that, Jack coldly threw back, "Then you should have killed yourself." Jack left him sitting on the ground and said, "Goodbye, Vet. Do better in your next life." Vet was confused. What do you mean?" As soon as he finished, Vet heard the cries of some animal nearby, which terrified him. Mutated beasts appeared one after another. Jack turned his back and walked away, leaving behind Vet's pleas. "Jack, help me. I'm sorry, I beg you." Jack didn't look back. Compassion. That was the lesson Vet taught him. I will never make that mistake again. Scene shift to Jem's side. Seeing Jack return, he asked irritably, "Jack, boss, should we intervene?" "We cannot. Let Verger's trash run wild on our turf." Hearing him say that, Jack replied unhesitatingly and annoyedly, "Leave it. Some people have to learn to stand up the hard way." Everyone turned away, leaving Jem with Verger's two lackeys. Jack stood to the side and discussed the scene before them. You can't turn mice into a swarm of bees. Van, standing next to him, asked, "He's just a kid, isn't he? They think a few nice words will change the world. Should we help him?" Jack turned away emotionless and replied, "Leave it. Let him get a bit wiser, or die, whichever comes first." Van carefully thought about it, and then went along with Jack's plan. "Let them torture him a bit first, then we appear as heroic saviors." "Nice thought, boss." Verger's minion held a sharp whetstone in his hand. He excitedly said, "Now is your chance to beg, you weakling. If you do, we'll make it quick." "Maybe?" Jem's face turned gray, and he roared, "So what if I'm weak?" The guy, hearing that, was startled and backed away. Jem continued full of vigor, "Does that mean we have to kneel in the mud and let you stomp on us?" Everyone hearing that was stunned and listened. "You harass our loved ones, turning our lives into a nightmare." He pointed strongly toward everyone. "No, I refuse to live like that. When I almost died, my life flashed before my eyes. Do you know what I saw?" The fat one, hiding behind the thin one, asked curiously, What did you see?" Jem replied firmly, "Nothing. I saw nothing." He calmly continued, "I saw a life not worth more than a glob of spit on the ground, a life of endless labor just to receive zero in return. Living like a slave is not living. That is hell, and that hell lasts until we die. And I realized one thing since I'm already in hell. Why don't I fight? What do I have to lose?" Jem turned to the crowd and asked, "What do we have to lose?" He didn't hesitate, and with an inspiring spirit, "Are we weak? Yes. Are we cowardly sometimes? Yes. But if we fight together, we can do the impossible. So brothers, sisters, I ask you to lend me your strength, and I will lend you mine. I will be your sword and your shield, and together we will win back our dignity." The crowd was convinced by his words. Everyone cheered his name, "Jem, Jem, Jem." One of them panicked and shouted, "Jem, watch out!" He nimbly dodged the tall, thin guy, attacking from behind. As if he had sensed something, a small cut appeared on Jem's arm. The tall, thin guy saw that and started swinging wildly, but Jem dodged them all. He suddenly countered with one strike, taking that guy down. Done with that, Jem calmly said, "One down. Where's the other?" His eyes looked toward everyone. The fat one had already been beaten black and blue by them. Seeing that, Jem excitedly raised his voice, "See, my brothers, Verger is nothing. He and his men only have a few, while we are countless. Follow me, and I swear with my life that he will never threaten us again." Clapping suddenly erupted. That made Jem look toward Jack. He looked at Jem and said seriously, "Jem, we need to talk." Goza's figure rushed over her small hands, lifting the curtain that had shielded Jem. She stepped inside and pulled the curtain shut. Goza worriedly asked in a loud voice, "Brother, what have you done?" Jem asked suspiciously, "What do you mean?" Goza, losing her composure, said, "Don't play dumb. Everyone is talking about it. Why? Were you foolish enough to kill Verger's men again?" Jem calmly bandaged the wound on his hand and replied that it was necessary. Goza was confused. Why was it necessary to kill them? He responded indifferently, "To make friends." Hearing Jem's answer, she was confused and continued to ask, "To make friends? Who kills people? To make friends?" He pointed to a nearby chair and told Goza to sit down. She was furious at her brother's indifference. Her eyes looking at him became sharp. Jem saw that and sighed helplessly. "Suit yourself." In his head, a diagram appeared, and at the same time he solved, "To thrive in the mines, Goza, we needed allies to survive. In this sector, there are only two powers, Jack and Virgo. Jack is strong, but Virgo has the backing of the supervisors and his own goons, so his position is more secure. Honestly, if any monster wants influence, Virgo's faction is the obvious choice. But because Virgo has so many underlings, the internal competition is brutal. At best, I'd just end up as another grunt dying for him." I remembered the confident look on Jack's face. Jack is different. His position is weaker, and I knew he'd accept me as an ally as long as I could bring something to the table. So I showed him a performance he needed to see. Once I had something to offer, he came to me. Of course, things didn't go exactly as planned. The memory of the moment I decided to spare that fat guy becomes vivid. He was forced to his knees, begging desperately, "Please, for the grace of the SH, let me go." Hen coldly raised a sharp blade ready to finish him off. Suddenly, Jem stepped in to block it. Jack witnessed the scene and frowned. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Jem turned back, saying seriously, "I think we should let him go." Jack, anxious, warned him, "Are you kidding me? If we let him go, he'll be back tomorrow, and next time it'll be your head or your sister's." Jem shook his head, rejecting Jack's claim. He began to state his case. "Listen, whether we kill him or not, I've already offended Virgo enough for him to hunt me down to the ends of the earth. But showing mercy to a victim of this painful life shouldn't be a crime. There will be times when we hit rock bottom and are forced to do anything to get stronger. Some of us even do terrible things out of desperation." Jem turned to look at the fat man, confidently stating, "I believe that every monster deserves at least one chance to redeem themselves, because even when we sink into the darkness, we can still swim back to the surface on our own." He patted the fat man on the shoulder and asked, "Can you still swim, my friend?" The fat man hesitated and groaned. He tilted his head to look at his cohorts. He was terrified that what happened to his friend would happen to him. But then his fear turned into determination. He said firmly and loudly, "I can swim, I can swim." Jem continued to persuade Jack, "I know this isn't easy for you, but we have to prove that we are different from Virgo. And what stronger message could we send to Virgo?" Jem's words made Jack frown in thought. Under Jack's skeptical gaze, Jem showed that he wasn't weak. Hen witnessed the whole process. He smiled curiously and said to Jem, "You're playing a dangerous game, kid. I like that." This made Jem hesitate. He replied, "Thank you." Realizing he didn't know his name, Hen cheerfully spoke up, "Hen, but you can call me Hen. That's what the brave ones call me, and you are very brave." Hearing that, Jem quickly said thank you to Hen, then turned back to persuade Jack, "Please, Jack, can you let him go?" Hen trusted Jem and put in a good word. "I think we should listen to the kid, boss. He's got guts." Jack pondered for a moment, then sighed helplessly, raising his arm and declaring, "Fine, that's your funeral." The fat man frantically looked around, then stood up and ran away. Reaching the cave entrance, he stopped and turned, back to say to Jem, "Thank you, friend." After saying that, he turned and left. Jem proudly boasted to Jack, "See, there's still hope." Jack, feeling annoyed, looked away and muttered, "You're crazy." Some people behind them started whispering, "I can't believe he let him go. See, I told you." Jem ignored them, closed his eyes, and said to Jack, "Or maybe this place has lived on fear for too long." Jack helplessly frowned and replied, "You..." Suddenly, a voice rang out, "Are you two done with your little drama?" Those appeared, and his serious presence made everyone surprised and panicked. Someone loudly announced, "It's the supervisor." Jack saw him like a mouse seeing a cat. He nervously stammered, "Supervisor, Jem." Jem, on the other hand, was overjoyed and loudly called his name, "Those." He happily walked over to shake hands with Those. The two chatted, and Those spoke first. "Hi, Jem. How's Goza doing?" Jem replied, "She's fine. I'll let her know you asked about us." Finished. Those turned to the crowd, roaring furiously, "All right, you lazy bunch. The show's over. Get back to work. If you're slow, again, you'll get the lash." Seeing that, Jack immediately whispered to Jem, "Isn't he angry?" Jem glanced at him and calmly said, "He's a family friend, but he will be angry if we keep standing here. Do you have somewhere we can talk?" Ending the flashback here. Jem continued telling Goza. In the end, Jack realized the times were changing and decided to side with me instead of fighting me. He offered to protect me from Virgo and support me in establishing my own faction. Goza was curious. "And what does he get out of it?" Jem replied nonchalantly, "I agreed to become his vassal and manage the buffer zone between his territory and Virgo's." Hearing that, Goza asked helplessly, "So, you're a new gang boss? Isn't that what you wanted?" "No. No matter who you are," Jem calmly affirmed her suspicion. "That's right. You can't protect the people you love without strength, and I am not strong enough to do it alone. I need others to support me." He pointed at Goza and added, "Including you." Hearing that, Goza skeptically asked, "Are you still a part of you?" "No, my brother." Jem quickly changed his expression and replied, "He is who he is, and he loves you very much. In an annoying way, always." Goza's sharp, serious eyes looked straight at him. "What is your name?" "Your real name." Jem nervously backed away, saying, "Do we really have to do this? If I tell you my real name, and I am a demon, you'll be forced to hide it to avoid it being revealed, or else you'll be stuck with me like a servant." Goza continued to ask, "So what, say it before I go find a nun." Faced with her intensity, Jem had to agree. "Fine. My name is Leonard Iran Vandersteen, but people call me Lep." Knowing this, Goza sternly ordered him, "All right, Lep, hit yourself." Jem looked at his own fist and trembled. Then he joked, No, that's not happening." Goza smiled brightly and said, "That's enough for me." Elsewhere, the fat man hurriedly ran forward. He remembered the hand that saved him and the words, "Can you swim, my friend?" The fat man remembered his past. He had a wife and 2 children until one day his family was backed into a corner. The big henchman of Gelma looked at his wife with greedy eyes. The couple was terrified, but the fat man finally gathered the courage to speak up and protect his little family. A hand rests on his shoulder. A henchman with bangs looks at the fatty with interest as they drag him away, leaving his wife and children behind. He is taken to kneel before a man. Jem looks at him coldly. With deep contempt, he sighs and waves his hand, essentially agreeing to take the fatty in. Next came the repeated looting and drinking, and finally he abandoned his wife and children to go philandering, leaving them sad. The scene shifts to the 3 of them drinking together, and then it's time for Jem to deal with the big guy in their trio. The scene repeats itself. "Can you swim? Can you?" the fatty asks, clutching his head in regret, wondering what he has done with his life. He thinks of his wife and 2 children. Jem, can we fix this? You'll see. We'll leave here and start a new life. I promise. He regains his spirits, running forward while shouting, I will swim inside the cave. In the crowded market, some are hawking their loot, while others are socializing and chatting. Goza impatiently calls out, Jem, I'm not done yet. Jem ignores his sister, his gaze wandering around with interest. Then he says, Are you planning to stay here all morning? I'm just speeding up the process. You need to save money. Hearing this, she gets angry because someone keeps hoarding all their rewards. Jem, feeling restless, quickly explains, I'm saving money to buy a wooden door for our cave. Goza sighs, launching into a rant. How many times do I have to tell you? We don't need a door. We live next to the guard post who's going to bother us. Besides, you collect tribute, don't you? You don't skim off the workers. Like everyone else, do you? Jem puts on an honest face and begins to explain to his sister, It's not like that. Jack didn't give me this area because it's a gold mine. He gave it to me because he barely gets anything out of it. If anything, I've saved him money by taking it off his hands. Goza looks at Jem suspiciously. Really? You took it, if it's such a bad deal. His self-confidence rises. From humble beginnings, great things will arise. Just wait and see, I will. Before he can finish, a loud shout rings out from afar. Lord Jem, Lord Jem. Jem points to the person who just arrived, gasping for air, and introduces him. Goza, this is my new subordinate. Vaughn, what's wrong? Vaughn looks serious and reports, Lord Jem, Jack just sent word that they've announced a new expedition to the lower floors. Vaughn tries to say, the last part, in 2 weeks. This leaves Jem and Goza lost in thought. At their secret base, Vaughn is commanding his warriors in training. He stands to one side and shouts, Attack! Instantly, all the spears point in one direction perfectly. Perhaps their movement isn't quite right. Vaughn commands them again. The whole group simultaneously performs. The movement again, raising their spears and pointing them in one direction. Their spirit this time doesn't seem clear enough. Vaughn shouts, again, once more. A group of skinny men perform the movement again, like mass-produced robots programmed to do so. This time, it seems better. Vaughn doesn't continue. He shouts, stand at attention, spears up. Vaughn turns and respectfully says to Jem, they are ready for your inspection, or I mean, my lord. Behind him, the soldiers are standing at attention, one hand holding a spear and the other raised in a military salute. Jem looks at them for a moment, then says to him, thanks. You go see what they're doing. Jem's golden eyes dart in one direction. In that gaze lies an inscrutable depth. Following his gaze, one can see 2 soldiers in the ranks are not being serious. They are discussing a topic that seems very interesting, laughing and chatting, completely oblivious to their surroundings. Not wanting to let this continue, in this place, Jem darts forward like a bullet. He kicks the spear shaft of the one closest to him. The soldier is suddenly kicked off his pivot, losing his balance and staggering. Jem speaks in a stern voice, reminding the other soldier, who has now stood at attention, his face bowed in apology. The other one couldn't even stand losing his center of gravity from the sudden physical impact, so he's currently face-planting into the damp floor of the basement. This is a weapon, not a toy. When you stand at attention, eyes front, mouths shut. Understand? Having said that, he turns to Vaughn to assign their punishment. 40 push-ups each. Assign someone to supervise them and have the rest of the recruits start combat training. Vaughn jumps in surprise, reflexively replying without a second thought, yes, my lord. The soldiers are divided into 2 teams standing opposite each other, preparing to train. Jem sits on one side watching them. They rush into the fray, and finally they achieve a relatively positive result. He concludes, I've tried to teach simple combat tactics, and it seems they understand the idea. That good feeling only lasts a moment. Eventually, Jem can't help but voice the feelings in his heart. But in the end, they're just minors. It's no surprise they're easily defeated by goblins. His soldiers, despite being taught basic tactics, are no match for the goblins. When facing them, they can only choose the 36th stratagem, running away to preserve their numbers and avoid being attacked. Jem sits with his elbows on his thighs, his chin resting on his hands, and sighs, continuing. The expedition's guide was injured, and thanks to that, we've gained more time. But it's still not enough. Vaughn's face darkens, and he falls silent, not answering. He partly understands Jem's mood and sighs. After a moment, Vaughn breaks the silence. He seems as shy as a new bride as he asks Jem, "My lord, I've never fought before, but I've seen some soldiers fight against and would it be better if we had ranged weapons?" Jem watches the recruits train without looking back. Sure, but wood suitable for bows is hard to find. The upper class is stingy, and those annoying goblins have a monopoly on that wood. Vaughn panics, his volume completely lacking any restraint, sounding as flat and casual as if they were talking about the sunny weather today, and not discussing military strategy. He looks around and whispers, "My lord, please don't talk so loudly." Jem understands Vaughn's concern, but he is in a state of helplessness, having no interest in doing anything or trying to keep anything a secret, because perhaps to him, even if someone heard, it wouldn't matter because he himself hasn't found a solution to this problem yet. He rests his chin on his hands again and lets out a long, heavy sigh. Jem replies, "I'm not an idiot, Vaughn. I'm just feeling desperate. I really don't know what I would trade to get a submachine gun right now." Vaughn suggests, "Why not use slings and spears?" Jem, who has now sat up straight and is no longer sighing with his chin on his hands, crosses his arms and shares his idea for him to hear. Most types of rocks are too weak to penetrate the outer shells of and the bogeymen can't carry too many spears. However, I think if we could be a bit creative, could we put them into the gaps in the slings? Vaughn for a moment couldn't fully understand what Jem meant and asks back, "Put them into the gaps? We could do, think about it. The potential of the slingshot might surprise you. If you share your ideas with me, we could load them with all sorts of surprises like paralytic poison or sleeping powder. You're free to choose. We could even fill them with oil to ignite our enemies. Everything would be perfect if we could pull it off," but the harsh reality slapped him right in the face. It brought him back to his senses. Jem returned to his slump of despair as before. He sighed wearily. "It's a real shame, but all of that costs money. And we've already spent everything we had on wooden armor and wooden helmets for the warriors." Vaughn replied in a spirited tone, "The warriors really like them." "That's good, sir," Jem replied. He propped his chin on his hand, wishing, "If only we had metal ammunition for the slingshot, it would be much more effective." Vaughn asked back, "Sir, would lead bullets be effective?" Jem replied, "Absolutely. A good lead bullet could pierce a helmet. But although we could buy the lead, we don't have anyone to cast it." Vaughn opened up a very promising path forward. "Actually, sir, I think I know someone who could do it." Jem's eyes widened in surprise as he looked at Vaughn. He jumped up and asked, "You can really do it?" Vaughn explained, "He's an exile that my father saved a long time ago. I'll ask him to help us, but he won't work for free." Pausing for a moment, Vaughn continued, "The only thing I'm sure of is that it won't cost much." With a positive path ahead, Jem felt like he had been re-energized. He jumped to his feet, put his hands on his hips, and said excitedly, "All right, that works too. Let's go meet him right now." Vaughn scratched his head, looking troubled, and said, "Well, about that, sir. He doesn't want anyone to know about him except for my family and a few others. If I take you to meet him, I'll be in big trouble." Jem's excitement from a moment ago was cut in half by this news. He sat back down. The situation was like this again. I guess he's too proud to let others see how far he's fallen. Vaughn apologized. "I'm sorry about this, sir." Jem had no intention of reprimanding him at all. "No, it's fine." He comforted him instead. "Go and negotiate a deal with him. These lead bullets will be a major turning point." Vaughn raised his hand to his forehead, stood at attention, and took the order. "Yes, sir." With that, he left immediately. At the same time, the two soldiers from earlier had finished their punishment. They dragged themselves over, and although they were completely out of breath, they still managed to say, "We have completed the push-up punishment, sir." Jem turned to the two soldiers and said, "Good job. I have a task for you two. Do you know where the acid pits are in the restricted caves?" Although they didn't understand why, the two soldiers answered honestly, "Yes," their voices weak and listless. Hearing this, Jem encouraged them. "Come on, go call a few more people and get some rope. We have a little trip to take." Jem stood in front of a monster with a wide mouth and sharp, dense teeth like thorns. The two soldiers who came along and Vaughn saw it and were scared to death. Their faces turned pale, and they backed away a few steps in fear. One of them couldn't help but ask, What is this?" They were still as terrified as before, the look of fear growing clearer without any sign of fading. Seeing this, Jem said to reassure them, "It's already dead. Don't worry." The soldier in charge of pulling the monster asked him, "Where should we put it, sir?" Jem pointed and said, "Leave it there against the wall." Vaughn asked curiously, "Sir, what is this?" Jem replied, "An old friend we're about to put to use. Do you have the samples I requested?" Before Vaughn could answer, Jem was already holding the product in his hand. He examined the lead or bullets. After a moment of observation, Jem remarked, "Not bad. Their weight and shape are quite good." Vaughn added, "He's very proud of his work, sir." Jem showed that he understood, replying, "I can see that from these patterns." Jem made a request to Vaughn, "Give me a slingshot and we'll test it." With the slingshot in hand, Jem placed the intricately patterned bullet into the rubber part in the center. Jem put force into swinging the cord. It spun in circles in the air like a ceiling fan. His target was the dead monster over there. Having gained enough momentum, Jem put his strength into his wrist and fired. The bullet tore through the air at an incredible speed, finally flying straight into the center of the monster's face and lodging there. Vaughn asked him, "How was it, sir?" Jem stared at the bullet he had just fired. He said, "I think we need a few more tests." After that, Jem ordered, "Vaughn, distribute the remaining samples to the others. Go and tell them that whoever shoots the deepest gets 10 points." Hearing that they would get 10 points, Vaughn pointed to himself, stuttering, as he finally managed to say, "Can I try too, sir? I used to be the best at shooting a slingshot in this area when I was a kid." Jem didn't object. "All right, show them how it's done." Jem once again took the role of an observer. He concluded, "In a bright future, even a young child can use a slingshot to hunt for food. This will be a turning point." Vaughn, as if fueled by adrenaline, was full of energy as he tried it out, but perhaps the final result wasn't very promising. Jem encouraged him, "Better luck next time. Just keep practicing hard." Vaughn replied, "Yes, sir." Even his voice carried a sense of complete disappointment. Not wanting to let his energy fade for too long, Jem called to him, "Vaughn." He looked up at Jem without saying a word. The intention was clear: let his master command, and he would just listen and obey. Jem instructed him to report to the guy that they really needed a lot of bullets, the more the better, but to skip the decorative patterns. "We don't have time for that." Vaughn finally brightened up again. He happily replied, "Yes, sir," and immediately rushed off. Seeing Vaughn happy and leaving Rosa standing next to Jem, couldn't help but exclaim, "Looks like someone had a fun day." Jem steered the conversation in an unrelated direction. "It would be better if you let me buy a wooden door for our house." Rosa raised her hand and countered her attitude, shifting from normal to irritable and grumpy. "How many times have I told you about this? We can't buy a new door." Then Rosa held her face miserable. "You know what happened to me today, right? The supervisor told me to take it slow because I was working too hard to earn points." Jem scratched his head and asked. Rosa grabbed his collar. She shouted, "It's terrible, Jem. It's really bad. You're in charge of working yourself to death. I told you to take care of your health." After pouring out the day's burden, Rosa let go of his collar. and turned her back to him. Jem coaxed her. "Look, Rosa, I know it's very hard for you to carry everything on your own, but it's all for our future." Finally, to end the subject, Rosa turned back and replied, "Whatever." When they arrived home, Jem spoke first. "Let me cook dinner, okay? You just rest. At least I can." Before he could finish, Vaughn finally had that bright look back. He cheerfully replied, "Yes, sir," and immediately rushed off. Seeing Vaughn so happy, Rosa stood next to Jem and couldn't help but exclaim, "Looks like someone's having a great day." Jem steered the conversation in a completely different direction. "It would be better if you let me buy a wooden door for our house, Rosa." Lifting her hands, she retorted, her attitude shifting instantly from calm to grumpy and annoyed. "How many times do I have to tell you, we can't afford a new door?" After saying that, Rosa covered her face, looking miserable. "You know what happened to me today, right? The supervisor told me to take it easy because I was overworking myself just to earn points." Jem scratched his head and asked, "So, that's when Rosa grabbed his collar and shouted, 'It was terrible, Jem. It was awful. You're responsible for working yourself to death. I already told you to take care of your health.'" After unloading the weight of her day, Rosa let go of his collar and turned her back on him. Jem tried to soothe her. "Look, Rosa, I know it's incredibly hard for you to shoulder everything alone, but it's all for our future." Finally, to end the topic, Rosa turned back and replied, "Forget it." Once they got home, Jem tried to speak first. "Let me cook dinner, you just go rest. At least I can." Before he could finish, both were shaken by the strange scent spreading through the air. Rosa reacted the fastest, asking, "What is that smell?" right after she saw something and screamed in terror. Jem finally saw what was in front of them, but Rosa turned away, unable to look. She cried out, unable to hold it in anymore, and started throwing up. Jem was beside her, rubbing her back, saying, "Maybe we'll finally get that door after all." Verger, lost in his memories as a young boy, was confused by the noise from the crowd. He was drawn to the delicious, eye-catching food laid out before them. Seeing a man gorging himself and watching the boy drool, the man sneered, "Look at that hungry kid." Another one sitting nearby chimed in, "What has he done to deserve to eat? Let him find his own food." With that, his stepfather walked over, grabbed him by the neck, and threw him aside aggressively, snarling, "Get out and scavenge for scraps, kid. Go find your own place in this world." Verger thought to himself, "Back then, I thought life was only full of suffering. My stepfather was a gang leader in the area where I lived. When he looked at me, he only saw my mother's past and his own failures, and those who hated my father took all their anger out on me. They just left me a young boy to struggle out in the streets fighting for food like that. After some time, when I was old enough, my parents sold me to the arena to pay off their gambling debts. Every single night, Verger had to leave everything behind and fight with all his might against other kids just to survive. I lived through blood and gore day after day until one child fell to his knees shaking, begging with his mouth open, 'Please have mercy.' Verger stood there panting heavily. I frowned and thought to myself, I have no mercy to give. His life means my death." The compassion in Verger was slowly withering away. In the end, he ruthlessly lowered his sword and killed the child. He fell into deep thought. Where I lived, rat fights were common. The children in this district would often amuse themselves by catching rats that were starving, making them fight to the death over breadcrumbs. Just like me, the weak were forced to fight to amuse the strong. But one night, I saw something. A gang member was using a small stick to poke a rat that wasn't moving anymore, aggressively shouting, "Get up and fight." Suddenly, another rat, in an act of resistance and revenge, lunged out and bit the guy's hand. That kid was terrified, frantically shouting, "Get away from me!" Then the kid quickly regained the upper hand, smashed the rat down, and crushed it to death. Verger watched it all from afar. His eyes widened. He bit his lip and thought, seeing that beast fight back, I suddenly realized that if even an animal cannot Accept a life of slavery. Then how could I? It knew it couldn't win, but it still fought. It died like a rat, not a slave. Verger clenched his fists tightly, thinking to himself, if a rat could have such courage and determination, why couldn't I? Verger's eyes began to glow with the fire of determination. He constantly reminded himself that from that day on, I broke the chains that bound me, and I only lived by one rule. That was my own rule. Years passed. One day he poisoned his parents cleanly without anyone seeing. Verger stared at his parents solemnly, thinking, if my parents had been smarter, they might have avoided this fate. Verger didn't even regret his actions. He coldly thought, I prepared everything very thoroughly. They won't ever wake up again. They taught me the rules of this world, so I took back everything they had. Verger raised his axe, stained with blood, his face expressionless and detached from the world. He thought, the strength, the life, and even their very skin. He stood on a high platform looking down at the kids below, frowning. He shouted, tonight you have witnessed the death of this old pig. Now tell me, who do you want to serve? A sound interrupted his train of memory. Verger lowered the flute in his hand, solemnly looking at the one who just shouted his name to threaten the other guy. Oswan panicked, hurriedly started explaining, sorry boss, but… Verger sighed and urged him, speak Oswan. Oswan hurriedly reported the situation, boss. Right, Gala is a traitor. Verger heard this and just calmly turned his face away, nodding. I understand. He walked over to the clay statues nearby, picked one up, and looked at it intently. After a long pause, he whispered, what a pity. He recalled, when I took my father's place, I was surrounded by a circle of old men. To survive, I needed people. Comrades around me, people with the same aspirations as me. Verger remembered the time he wholeheartedly chose Gelma to be his man. Out of thousands, he bit his lip and thought, Gelma was the first of the 10,000 people I chose to be my right hand. The abandoned bastards of the nobility just like me. Those who shared the same hunger for the future. After that, he and his subordinates raided the place where the goblins were gathering to drink, ambushing them while they were getting drunk. Verger's group kicked the door open, stormed in, and captured them alive. Verger firmly thought, together we will secure my position and their future. At that time, Gelma had led the charge, killing the goblins that stood in their way, which made Verger praise him. You are like a son to me, Gelma, my firstborn, my choice. Back to the present, Oswan was trembling from the betrayal, constantly asking, why would he do that? I don't understand. Verger waved his hand to calm him down, saying, don't fool yourself. When I chose him and Gela to be my left and right hands, his ambition meant he only had two choices, submit or revolt. Verger turned and put the clay statue back in its place. He let out a breath and thought, well, that's to be expected. Ever since I took all of you in, I taught you that this world is chaotic, cruel, and unfair. I want all of you to achieve great things without being bound by rules, morality, or the gods. However, you reap what you sow. Oswan finally regained his composure, hesitantly, looking at Verger, asking, so what will we do with him, boss? Verger sneered and coldly continued, don't worry. The arena is being built right now. We just need to wait for the results. Oswan was startled upon hearing this and hurriedly said, is that why you told Gelma to send those heads to the Peugeot family? Verger just nodded. Indeed. Oswan, confused, added, but boss, using the Peugeot family's heads is a bit too much. Verger rubbed his chin and said, to a deserter, perhaps people like Piog don't hesitate to commit crimes when they see profit, but when they hit their limit, I thought maybe I could leave the past behind. He gave a dry, bitter laugh and continued coldly, I never told them to kill or kidnap women. They did that on their own, but when their conscience kicked in, they blamed me. Otwan, hearing this, retorted, so you didn't even stop them? Virgo shook his head, replying, no, not exactly. If I spent all my time supervising them, they would never have grown this strong. and in the end, it was useful. He paused for a moment and added, "His sons are dead. At least now his life will have more meaning." Virgo recalled the past, a bright smile appearing as he said, "Fortunately, Polo managed to save his wife and daughter from Gelma's clutches. I made sure they were taken to safety. That's the least I could do." He looked up at OS1, his voice dropping to a stern command. Tell the Gelma army to gather their forces and attack Game's legion. That young man has built quite a large army on his own. It's time we put them to the test." OS1 nodded. "Yes, sir." Virgo reached out and took a flute, lifting it to his lips. He fell into deep thought, muttering, "Don't disappoint me, Game, if you truly are who you are." At the base, Game was discussing strategy with everyone. He pointed out, with Jack's forces will block off the other routes. Their army will be forced to pass through the Carrion Cave. That's exactly where we want them. Then Game turned to Vaughn and asked, "Are the defensive barriers ready?" Vaughn replied, "The soldiers said they are ready for tomorrow morning, even if they have to die." Game, with a cold, sharp gaze, looked at Vaughn, his tone turning icy. "That's how it will be if they aren't prepared when Gelma's army arrives." Vaughn quickly replied, "Yes, sir. I will remind them about that." He hesitated, his face uneasy. "Sir, I'm a bit worried. The soldiers are quite afraid. We're outnumbered, and most of our troops have never been in a real battle before." But Game cut Vaughn off with confidence. "But what? Listen to this. Since ancient times, generals have always sought the blessings of the gods. It seems some things are universal, even if they are just superstitions." The scene shifts to the entrance of a cave opening into a misty fog. Game walked in, calling out, "Hello, is anyone there?" Suddenly, two cloaked goblins appeared behind Game. "So you finally arrived," they said. Game immediately asked, "I've come to see the priestess Kathiga." One of the goblins replied, "Everyone who wishes to see the priestess must first be purified," and he pointed toward the cave entrance, next to him. Entering, Game followed their directions and saw an old goblin woman sitting there. The old woman spoke, "I am here to serve the waters of Marin, to purify your spirit. You must drink it twice." Game remembered the last time he had to drink this terrible liquid. He shuddered. "Waters of Marin, fantastic. I hope this time it's more effective than the last. Where do I get the water?" The old woman replied, "The gods will provide. You must fill your cup with the waters of Marin dripping from the stalactites." Seeing Game staring intently at every drop of the water falling, she said, "You seem very impatient." Game sat down and replied, "I'm about to go into battle. I don't want to be absent when the fighting starts." Hearing this, the old goblin woman looked puzzled. Strange, most soldiers would run away from the fight. Game replied, "Maybe it's because I'm not a normal person." The atmosphere seemed to grow tenser. The old woman asked Game, full of innuendo, "Why is this battle so important to you?" He replied, "I doubt you would understand." The old goblin woman spoke her mind. "This is the temple of Zeja, the goddess of war. Who would understand better?" In Game's eyes, there was no fear, only a calm acceptance. He said, "You're right. This battle will decide my future. If I win, I can change this world into a better place. If I fail, my soldiers, and I will be killed." He picked up the cup and asked, "Is there enough water?" The old woman told Game to drink up. After taking a sip, Game winced, his face turning pale. "It still tastes like a sewer." The old woman remained silent for a moment, then said, "You said you'd make this world a better place. What are you fighting for?" Game, while placing the cup down to catch more water, replied, "Justice. I want the world to be fair." The old woman reminded, "You young man, no world is fair. The world is inherently unfair, and fairness for one person means unfairness for another. Fairness for you is unfairness for someone else. It's a cycle that never ends, unless there is bloodshed." Game's eyes turned cold and skeptical, questioning the old woman. How strange for someone who worships the goddess of war to say that. Isn't your deity bloodthirsty? The old woman replied, the god Zeus only desires what is best for this world. Living creatures become stronger through conflict. I'm pretty sure the dead can't become stronger. The winner is the only one who is truly strong. Game mocked. If I said your god was truly insane, would a priestess like you be offended? Hearing Game's question, she laughed loudly and said, all the gods are insane. If they were normal, would the world be like this? Game stared pensively at the cup, his voice full of determination. Then what choice do I have to give up and live a life like a maggot? The old woman continued in his ear, foolish child, your heart is so full of anger that you can't see you're fighting the wrong enemy. The gods are not against you. You are doing their bidding. Game didn't care about what she said, but picked up the cup and drank it all. He looked at her with an extremely serious expression, asking, then tell me, Priestess Kathaga, who should I fight? She seemed to see something different in Game compared to others, and praised, not too foolish, I see. Game calmly said, you have quite sharp teeth for an old priestess. Who lives on roots and berries? The old priestess replied, well played, but no, I am not a god. Game didn't care and answered, God or human, I will defeat them all. And anyone who stands in my way, I will not spare. The priestess saw how stubborn he was and still wanted to stop him. A world formed by blood will still be a world of blood and violence. You are challenging the insane gods, or just carrying out their wishes. Game smiled lightly. Are you saying I'm just a pawn? The old priestess asked in return. Are you sure you aren't just a pawn? Game didn't answer, but stood up. All right, enough of this superstition. I had enough of this at the orphanage last time. Seeing Game turn to leave, the priestess asked, don't you want to pray? For the blessing of the god Zeus for your army. Game didn't look back, just waved his hand. No need. Let your god decide who to bless. I have a war to win. Seeing Game return, Vaughn immediately asks, how did it go, my lord? Game's expression is very uneasy, but he still replies, it's settled. The goddess of victory has spoken. Gather everyone together. Meanwhile, he is lost in thought, wondering what to tell everyone. Once they gather, Game begins. Everyone I want to. Before he can finish, a loud shout echoes out. The priestess has arrived. The priestess appears to everyone's astonishment. General, may I bestow a blessing upon your troops before the coming battle? The priestess raises her hands high, shouting in a booming voice. Brave warriors, Jesus, the goddess of war, has sent me to bless you all and grant you the strength to defeat your enemies. She has also ordered me to give your general a new name, the name of a great warrior who is worthy. Therefore, Game shall henceforth be known as Lep the Liberator. Seeing the priestess say this, Game is completely stunned. Below, everyone chants, Lep. Game turns to the priestess. How did you? The priestess doesn't let Game finish. She looks at him with a resolute gaze. Your time in the shadows has ended, Lep. Show the gods what you are capable of. Elsewhere, two injured soldiers are helping each other toward the base. Hamo frowns. There you are. The scarred soldier looks a bit surprised. Oh, Hamo. He asks, what happened to this guy? Oh, it's nothing, he replies. Deo just slipped and hit his head. Hearing this, Hamo says, I see. Take him to get treated. Before he leaves, the scarred soldier turns back to warn him. Be careful. Gelma is in a bad mood. Hamo replies, thanks, I'll try not to make any mistakes. Hamo arrives at Gelma's tent. He is busy cleaning his weapons. Seeing Hamo arrive, he asks, here to watch the battle. Hamo doesn't answer, but instead challenges him. Don't you? I think you've been too harsh on your own men. Gelma calmly replies, it's just discipline, nothing more. Hamo asks, annoyed, then why have you been ignoring me? Am I nothing to you? Gelma is struck dumb by the question, unable to answer. Hamo continues, Gelma, I didn't want to be Virgo's successor. What other choice did I have? Tell me. Gelma snaps back irritably. You could have refused. Conflict erupts between Haimo and Gelma. Haimo frowns. Do you really think Virgo would have accepted that? If you were him, would you have accepted it? Exactly. I don't want to lose you. Gelma furious looks at Haimo and yells, Do you want me to ignore Virgo's order to attack Game AQ? Haimo explodes, his eyes filled with rage as he shouts back, Stop playing dumb. We both know what I'm talking about. Virgo knows. Gelma looks at him with cold, sharp eyes. Of course he knows. Why do you think he sent me here? This whole campaign is just for him to wipe me out from the start. If I win, my troops will be wounded, and I won't be able to challenge him. And if I lose... Haimo immediately interrupts. Then go see him beg for forgiveness. Tell him you'll be loyal. Suddenly Gelma's voice softens. He gently pats Haimo's head. Haimo, have you forgotten what SH said? 1 leads to glory, but 2 will only bring tragedy. Suddenly soldiers shout, Commander, the troops are ready. As Gelma puts on his armor, he warns Haimo, Haimo, no matter what you and Virgo think, I'm not stupid. My scouts report every move Game makes. This will be over before noon. Haimo says Lep. Gelma asks, What? Haimo explains, My spies tell me he's now calling himself Lep. Last night, he was blessed by the priestess of Zeja with the title Lep the Liberator. Gelma says with a tone of contempt, Ha, really? The Liberator? How pathetic. Haimo warns him, You'd better tell your scouts to be more careful. That might not be the only surprise he's hiding. Gelma says confidently, He could be blessed by the gods 100 times, I don't care. My victory is inevitable, because I follow the path of SH. Haimo asks doubtfully, You still believe in that, don't you? You still think you'll become the next false god? Gelma speaks with a reluctant expression. And you still refuse to believe, Haimo says. The false god, SH, is just a myth, a character from stories. Do you really believe? And that there was once a tiny monster who conquered everyone in the forest and established a great tribe consisting of hundreds of smaller ones? And what about him getting stronger and changing form? After every few battles, he didn't just grow muscles, he grew in size and strength with every new battle. Gelma says full of determination, Nothing is impossible for those chosen by the gods. Haimo still tries to convince him, Then why is there nothing left if he was so great and united everything? Then where did it all go? Gelma replies, Haimo, I thought you knew your history. After his children poisoned him, they fought among themselves until almost nothing was left, and no one could recover the ancient secrets because the monster was always in a state of battle. We need a new false god to reshape the world. Haimo looks at Gelma, who has finished preparing his weapons, and asks, So that will be you and Virgo. Are you going to fight him? Gelma pulls back the curtain and says while walking out, The world must change, Haimo. And I don't care who I have to step over to make that happen. Stepping out of the tent, Gelma raises his weapon high and shouts, All right, everyone. It's time to crush some worms. We only have 10 days until the expedition, so let's get this done quickly and go home. Are you ready? The soldiers chant in unison. Yes, Commander. Haimo silently watches Gelma's retreating back and sheds tears, praying to himself, Stay safe, brother. May SH protect you. Gelma looks straight ahead, leading his army forward aggressively. Suddenly, he raises his hand, signaling the troops to take a break. A scout runs over to report, Commander, they have set up obstacles at the end of the cave just a few hundred kilik away. Kilik is a unit of measurement used by the Goblin tribe, named after the ancient armored warriors of the Ion legend, all of them standing about 2 meters tall. Gelma asked his subordinate how many there were. I see 20 of them, sir. Gelma calculated to himself. There had to be at least 30. He asked his subordinate again and learned from other scouts that all the side caves had been blocked. As for the houses around the edge of the cave, they were filled only with old people and children hiding and trembling. Hearing this, Gelma laughed triumphantly. Good. We need witnesses for what is going to happen here today. Suddenly, there was a report. Commander behind us. Gelma turned around to see Verger's army approaching. Seeing that the helmeted subordinate whispered to the one who had just reported, "You fool! He's here to make sure we fight and win. What else?" Then he turned to Gelma, hesitating. "If that's the case, Commander, why not join Verger?" He chuckled. "That's a good idea. Now go find me 300 more armed men. Maybe then this battle will be fair." Seeing everyone silently staring at each other, Gelma shouted loudly, "Why the long faces? He's here to witness our victory. Do you really think we'll lose to some nobody and a bunch of dirt diggers?" The soldiers looked at each other awkwardly, then simultaneously raised their weapons and shouted, "No, Commander!" Gelma was thrilled. "That's the spirit! Now let's show Verger what we can do." On the other side, Jem's army looked ahead and reported, "Sir, they've stopped advancing." Jem replied, "I see. Vaughn, it seems it's time for negotiations." Vaughn held Jem's weapon and asked, "Are you really going?" "Sir." Jem calmly answered, "Why not? It's tradition, isn't it?" Vaughn wondered, "Isn't that just a waste of time? I mean, they're going to attack us anyway." Jem looked at Vaughn firmly. "Vaughn, if you want to lead others, remember one thing. A battle is won or lost before it even begins. This is a golden opportunity to improve our chances of winning." As he spoke, he stepped forward. Vaughn still tried to reach out. "How will you do that?" "Sir," Jem replied, "by making him want to spill my blood." At this moment, Gelma was walking toward Jem. He spoke first. "You're Jem, huh? I thought it would be someone impressive, not a shorty like you." Jem said coldly, "I prefer to be called Jem." "And you are?" Seeing Jem didn't know his name, Gelma became even more arrogant. "You don't know who I am. You're even more foolish than you look. My name is Gelma, and I will be the one to finish you." Jem didn't show much emotion. He looked at him with disdain. "Gelma. So that's all Verger thinks I'm worth. Go back and tell your master to send us one loser or two mo here." As he spoke, Jem turned away and waved his hand dismissively. "You aren't worth my time." Gelma gritted his teeth. His hand clenched. "You pathetic worm, Suddenly he froze, then laughed loudly. Jem turned back. "I said something funny," Gelma gloated. "You come here. And with these childish games, when I crush you and your pack of rats, I'll ask my new slaves what it was that turned you into this. Then I'll make them compose a legendary song telling the story of how a weak, foolish idiot was crushed under my heel." Suddenly, he flinched. His pupils contracted when he saw Jem's presence suddenly feel like that of a god. Jem just turned away and said, "Pray for forgiveness from whatever god you believe in, because you won't get any mercy from me." Gelma returned to his army, doubting himself. What did I just see? Then he reassured himself, "No, it's nothing." Then he shouted, "I'll give a huge reward to anyone who brings me that brat's head." Gelma's army charged toward Jem's army. Gelma yelled, "Charge! The first one to break through the barrier gets 20 merits from me." Suddenly, projectiles flew toward Gelma's army, catching him by surprise. What? What was that? Dozens of his soldiers were hit, unable to react, leaving him stunned on the spot. In contrast, looking at Jem, he stood casually with his arms crossed, making Gelma even more frustrated. He gripped his weapon and charged forward, shouting, "Don't stop, keep moving." The soldiers consoled each other. "They're just slingshots, don't let them slow you down." Gelma's whole crowd screamed, charging in to crush everything. On Jem's side, he still stood calmly on high ground, watching them charge madly. Vaughn spoke up, "Sir, I think we've angered them." Everything seemed to be going according to Jem's plan. He jumped down and said to Vaughn, "Good. Vaughn, tell the slingers to retreat when they run out of ammo, and remind them to watch the markers. Keep the spearmen defending the barrier for as long as possible. It's time to prepare for the next phase." On Gelma's side, he thought to himself, "They actually think this pile of scrap can stop me." Then He ordered his troops not to hold back. A soldier on Gelma's side broke through Jem's shield wall, excitedly climbing over. "Come here, you fresh meat. Come back here, it's dinner time." Suddenly, he looked down at his feet and saw a rope. He picked it up and wondered, what's this? Seeing that Jem ordered his troops to retreat. Gelma still stood there observing the battle unaware. His subordinate reported, "Commander Verger is watching us." Gelma ignored the subordinate's words, and still full of arrogance, he turned back to say to his master, "Enjoy the show. It will be your turn soon, father." Suddenly, a massive fire erupted, engulfing all of his soldiers in a sea of flames. Only then did he realize it, screaming in despair. A soldier panicked. "What should we do, Commander?" A huge fire was covering the scene ahead. Os suddenly spoke up. "They've lost their advantage." Tumo, standing nearby, immediately retorted, "They'll take it back." Os said, "He already sent men to get water and blankets from the houses. It's only a matter of time before they break through the defensive line." Luster stood there, his voice full of mockery. "How pathetic! Use the shields." "You idiots, don't let the enemy escape." Oz pointed ahead and said, "No one is getting away. Look, Luster." After looking in the direction his companion was pointing, Luster's eyes flashed with surprise. Tumo looked too, his face showing shock. "Over there, it's—" A distant army was rushing in, carrying a blazing fire behind them as they approached the scene. One of them suddenly shouted, "It's Jack's army!" Oz stood there muttering, "Jack will crush him if he tries to run." Luster, standing nearby, taunted him, "This is nothing but a rat hole. Anyone want to place a bet? I'll put 20 on the brat." Tumo, unable to stand his annoying attitude, shouted, "How disgusting, this is our brother's life and you're gambling. But you idiots." Luster didn't seem to care. He just laughed. "You people are the ones who don't trust our brother." Tumo and Os both spoke up. "I need some extra bonus points. 20 on Gelma." Tumo wouldn't lose out and quickly said, "Fine, 20 from me too." Luster finished calculating and laughed gleefully. "Awesome. They're starting to move again." Over there, a subordinate was telling Gelma, "Commander, we've grabbed items from the houses." As he used the items to push back the fire, he said, "Good. Use them as shields and barricades. We'll have more ammo too." One of them added. He said urgently, "We need to do something that can break through that defense." Gelma suddenly felt a sense of confidence that he would win. He shouted loudly, "How pathetic is all we're doing, just playing hide and seek." On this side, Game was questioning his subordinate. "What are our numbers?" Vaughn, standing behind him, reported without hesitation, "It looks like 2 dead, 5 injured." After grasping the situation, Game said, "Understood. It seems we've lost a quarter of our troops in the attack. It's still not a fair fight, but this will do." Vaughn looked at him slightly confused. "Sir, about Jack's group." Game smirked. "Worry about what's in front of you. Don't worry about what's behind. Jack is only an issue if we fail. And we aren't going to fail, are we, Vaughn?" "No, Commander. We will not." Game's face was filled with confidence. "Good. Keep the horn ready." Down below, the enemy teams started holding their shields and rushed rapidly toward the fortress. The projectiles fired down could not penetrate those shields. They were fired and then deflected forcefully. Gelma, behind the shields, continuously directed his soldiers to hold the formation. A subordinate nearby reported, "Commander, look at the enemy, they're falling apart." Then a crowd of people ran in chaos. A twisted smile appeared on Gelma's face, his voice growing more intense. "The rats are doing what they do best. We will clean them up." Around him, his soldiers were chanting in unison, "Faster, brothers, faster." Those holding the shields became even more determined. "Advance further." Vaughn on this side became even more anxious. "Sir, my men are retreating." Game stood there observing for a moment, then spoke, "I see it." "Vaughn, do you know the difference between a good leader and a great leader?" Vaughn replied, slightly confused, "No, sir." Game spoke profoundly. "A good leader always tries to fix the mistakes of their past, but a great leader knows that they must look in all directions, not just behind or in front. Down below, both sides were clashing fiercely. On the other side, Gelma was still lost in the excitement, completely unguarded. Suddenly a cry rang out, making him pause. "What's that?" Then the shield stopped abruptly, causing Gelma, who was running, to slam into it. He looked at his injured leg, his face twisting. Gelma picked up a trap spike. So that's why they were running, to distract us. A sudden sound echoed across the battlefield. Gelma stopped dead. The signal horn. The subordinate next to him hurriedly clutched his head. "Commander, we're in trouble." Gelma immediately threw the spike away. He was impatient. "I know, you idiot. I have eyes," the subordinate continued. "It's not that, Commander. It's the huts. There's another army inside those huts." In the rain of arrows, a small figure darted through the night, rushing inside where the shields were protecting the group. Freddy was using wooden shields to create a protective cage for those inside. Arrows were being fired continuously by those outside at the guarded cage. Virgo's eyes flashed with deep thought. Luster laughed gleefully. "Looks like my money is still safe." Tumo stood there, shocked. "Gelma is trapped. Father, let me take some men to save them." Luster's gaze was full of contempt. "That's his battle. Tumo, just leave him there to rot." Tumo stood there, shouting, his face full of anger. "He is our brother, Luster." "You can say that." Oz suddenly yelled, cutting in, "Enough." Then he turned to look at Burger. "Commander, your decision." His eyes currently could not hide the murderous intent. Down below, Gelma was still being constantly pushed. "That brat! How can you even say that?" Rosa screamed, cutting him off. She then turned to look at Burger, the commander. The look in his eyes now couldn't hide his murderous intent. Jem down below kept being pressured. "That brat! Where on earth did you get an army like this?" A voice cut through his shouting. "And hey, is that Pog's wife over there?" It made him turn his head to look. A subordinate pointed in that direction. "Over there, that weird kid wearing the red armband. And that's Kanek's father, and Mon's little sister." He muttered, "I recognize most of these people." On this side, Hen was talking while chewing. "I thought the kid had lost a few screws when he told us to round up the families of everyone Gelma messed with. But man, there's a lot of them. Turns out, even a pack of mad ants can take down a giant." Vark said, looking a bit sour. "The giant isn't dead yet, Hen." He didn't seem to care much. "You think so?" Jack's eyes were full of murderous intent. Nothing is more dangerous than a beast backed into a corner. Suddenly, a shout rang out. "Commander Gelma!" A shadowy figure approached from afar. Gelma approached with a swagger. Gelma quickly looked up at the person facing him and whispered to the person next to him. "This guy likes to hear himself talk, doesn't he? Wait until he gets closer, then I'll signal to charge and kill him. Pass the word." The subordinate beside him hurriedly whispered, "Understood, Commander." Gelma's tone grew even more arrogant. "Coming here to bore us to death? Come here and tell us what you want." Game stood on the sidelines, his voice calm. "Sounds good. But I didn't come here to talk to you." Gelma's eyes grew even more furious. "What?" Game continued. "I came here to talk to your men." Then he shouted loudly, "Everyone listen to me. This isn't your fight." Everyone on the scene looked at each other in confusion. Game's voice grew louder and louder. He began to explain, "The blue side just wants us to fight each other so they can drain our strength. The best among us are dying by killing each other while they just laugh and enjoy the sunlight from up above. You are not my enemies. You are my brothers, and I don't want to hurt any of you. I know you were forced to be here. I know none of you wanted to be in this place. Not to die here for people who don't give a damn about your lives. I came to say that anyone who puts down their weapons will be free and keep their life." His words made Gelma feel the danger. He shouted back, "That will never happen. If we put down our weapons, you'll kill us all." The people there also seemed not to believe it. They shouted loudly, "That's right, we'd rather..." Drag you down to death with us than die without a fight, Gelma said smugly. You're wasting your breath, you worm. You think Ogre would let us live. Every member of the Ogre army had to fight to the death. After hearing their words, Game shrugged, acting like he didn't care. He said, maybe, maybe not. Have you ever wondered why he isn't helping you today? It's because he wants Gelma dead. Gelma and all those following him, Game pointed at the soldiers in the distance. He didn't come to support you. He came to kill you if you won. He's cleaning house. His hand was pointed straight at Ogre, who was standing proudly there. And as long as Gelma is alive, you will continue to be forced to fight and die for him. So the way I see it, you only have two choices. Either you all die, or Gelma dies. Game shrugged as if this were obvious. At this moment, a look of extreme fear appeared on Gelma's face. A soldier asked in a trembling, confused voice, "Commander, is that true?" Another chimed in immediately with a frantic tone. He said Ogre would slaughter us all if we didn't kill him. The crowd began to stir, whispers spreading in chaos. Maybe Ogre only wants him. We were just following orders, right? Gelma's eyes widened, his face pale with shock. Everyone, no, I never... He tried to shout over the noise. I am carrying out the will of... This is for you, all of you. Game folded his arms, a contemptuous smile on his face. You mean... for yourself. Gelma's veins bulged, his eyes bloodshot. He roared, swung his axe and lunged at him. A soldier stepped out of the ranks, trembling hands gripping an iron bar. Gelma suddenly froze. His eyes filled with shock. He blankly looked down to see an iron bar had pierced straight through his abdomen. He groaned, collapsed his eyes, becoming dull. Other soldiers stepped forward, hands still gripping their weapons, their voices shaking but firm. Sorry, Commander. My daughter's death. That was your fault. Don't blame us. Who's next? Gelma gritted his teeth, tightening his grip on the axe handle. You bastards! Fury exploded. He crazily swung his axe to slash the person who just spoke. Tears streamed down Gelma's cheeks as the light slowly faded from his glassy eyes. So this is how it feels, my lord. In his dying moments, childhood memories came flooding back. Why? Why could I do that to you? Cold blades plunged deep into his body. He fell to his knees in a pool of blood. I'm sorry, Father. A soldier in the ranks knelt on one knee and said decisively, We surrender, sir. Game and Vaughn simultaneously turned toward the sound. Ogre was approaching. A massive army gradually appeared from afar. The leader stepped forward with a proud and cold aura. He stared sternly at them with deep, hollow eyes. Hamo knelt before Gelma's corpse, tears streaming down. He gripped his sword, his eyes full of hatred. I will kill all of you, starting with you. Hamo was about to lunge when a deep, thunderous voice rang out from behind. Wait! He startled and turned back, eyes widening. Father, that piece of trash, starting with you. Hamo was about to lunge forward when a deep, booming voice echoed from behind. Wait! Jem startled and turned back, his eyes widening. That piece of trash! Vorj stood calmly, his gaze cold as he pointed forward. Two men nervously glanced back behind him. A massive army was quietly awaiting orders. With a dark, golden-eyed glare, the elder man stared. He watched him in silence, lost in thought for a long time, then turned and waved his hand to signal his entire army to retreat. The boy gritted his teeth, finally turning away, but not without sparing a resentful glance back. He shrugged his lips, curling into an arrogant smirk. The Elder's legion gradually vanished into the mist, leaving only silence behind. The boy asked softly, his voice tinged with surprise, We won, didn't we, sir? Why so? Jem stared straight ahead, his voice low. This was just a small skirmish. It wasn't the end of the war. Next time won't be this easy. Vaughn opened his hands, trying to persuade him. I don't think so. But we won today, sir. Isn't that worth noting? He closed his eyes and gave a faint laugh. You're right, it is worth it. Bring out the wine for everyone. They deserve it. The boy beamed and raised his hand in a military salute, his voice ringing out clearly. Yes, Commander. Before the festive atmosphere could spread, another voice hurried in. Commander, we're in trouble. Both immediately turned back. The soldier panted and spoke quickly. The men from Rak are stealing all the spoils of war, and the families are trying to kill all the prisoners. People were swarming around the corpses on the ground, looting them. Jem rushed over, his voice cold and commanding. Stop what you're doing right now. A guy squatting down smirked, not bothering to look at him, and replied with disdain, Beat it, kid. We're just cleaning up your mess. Jem tilted his head, his hand resting on the hilt of his spear, his voice serious. This is my trouble to clean up. Take your soldiers and leave. And don't come back until Jack and I reach an agreement. From afar, noisy footsteps echoed. The man gathered his things into a basket and growled an order. Quick, show this brat who's in charge here. The man with the dagger sneered, his eyes predatory. You look like you've made a decent haul, kid. Hand it over, or things are going to get ugly. More chaotic footsteps sounded rapidly. He closed his eyes and sighed in exhaustion, his frustration showing. He raised his spear in warning. You don't want to do this. Wig smiled, preparing to draw his club, replying mockingly, Fine, then I'll just take them from your corpse. Before he could finish, Wig took a massive punch to the face. Jem opened his eyes wide in shock as Wig collapsed. Hen furrowed his brow, rushing over angrily. What on earth are you three doing? The guys shivered, whispering an explanation. He was furious, the veins on his forehead bulging as he spat out each word. Do you want to lick the arena floor clean with your tongues this week, huh? Is that what you want to tell me? The group swayed, cold sweat pouring down, screaming in panic. No, we didn't mean to. Hen lowered his voice, threatening. Do you want to pull guard duty outside in the freezing cave? They shook their heads frantically like rattle drums. No. He pointed at Wig, his voice powerful. Then why are you still standing there? Drag this blockhead out of my sight right now. Don't let me catch you doing this again. Hen rubbed his temples and sighed, watching the three disappear, then turned back and smiled sheepishly. Sorry about that, kid. These idiots are going to be the death of me. He laughed. He handed his spear to the soldier standing behind him. Thank you for the help. Hen winked, half joking. You don't need to say that. I just wanted to explain to their families why they died so foolishly. Forget it. Hen shrugged with a half smile. I didn't intend to kill them, just teach them a lesson. He nodded slightly, his eyes looking lost for a moment. After what you did to Gelma, I'm surprised they even dared to do this. Some people just never learn, you know. From afar, a warm, calm voice spoke up. You're the one who recruited them after all. Hen hurried to turn and bow. Then, scratching his head, he said sincerely, Yes, sorry, Commander. Jen put his hands on his hips and smiled at Jack. Thanks for helping at the last minute. The man shook his head humbly. As my lieutenant said, you don't need to thank me. But he had nothing to lose. He stuck out his tongue and crossed his arms, joking, So does that mean you won't be demanding a share of the spoils? Vac laughed heartily, his tone humorous. Well, the deal was 2/3, but after that battle, I'll accept half. Jem smiled and held up 2 fingers. Half. Isn't that a bit too much? You said it yourself. We were the ones doing the fighting. How about I take 8/10 instead? The two-sided statistics board appeared. The score was 2/10 for him and 8/10 for the boy. Vac closed his eyes and shook his head, his tone sarcastic. See what happens when you're generous. People will always find a way to take advantage of you. You fought alone and won with minimal losses, but you couldn't have done it without my help. Half is the lowest I can accept. Jem held up 3 fingers again, relentlessly arguing. We didn't. Just eliminate one of your enemy's commanders, but you also gained a few spoils, didn't you? Without losing a single man. 7/3. Both sides argued and debated. Gelma was just a minor annoyance, and besides, he had helped the boy find the victims' families. He smiled smugly, still holding up 3 fingers. It's true you helped, but I'm the one who persuaded them to come. Still 7/3, but you get to keep Gelma's armor. Vac shook his hand to seal the deal, his tone decisive. Agreed. The lizard on the ground groaned as 3 pairs of cold eyes fixed on it. Jem turned toward Hen, his voice slow and deliberate as he added, "That belongs to you." The man cleared his throat and shouted an order. "All right." Then the soldiers stripped everything starting from the first fence. "Do it now." He crossed his arms and called Vaughn over, asking briefly, "What about the prisoners? Are they being guarded?" Vaughn replied hurriedly, sweat rolling down. "Yes, sir. The families didn't want to hand them over, but we convinced them." Jem nodded in satisfaction, his voice cold. "Good. Once the families are gone, strip the prisoners of everything but their pants and let them go. Remember to share 1/3 of the spoils with Jack. We had an agreement." Vaughn sweated and stammered, "I really don't like that man, sir." Jem tilted his head, his gaze indifferent. "We don't need to like him, Vaughn. We just need to cooperate while we still have a common enemy." Vaughn asked anxiously, "What will happen when we no longer have a common enemy?" Jem smiled, his eyes turning cold. "Then we'll know who is stronger. For now, we'll deal with that after the expedition ends." Vaughn looked around in panic, his hands trembling as he hugged his staff. A roar echoed, causing him to close his eyes and wave his staff wildly, calling out frantically, "Somebody!" Vaughn slipped and face-planted into the dirt. Grimacing in pain, he rubbed his head and groaned while trying to push himself up. Game walked over, tilted his head, and asked, "What are you doing down there, Vaughn?" Vaughn stammered, terrified. I'm sorry, sir, Game leaned down to pick up his walking stick, a playful mocking tone in his voice. "Trying to catch breakfast, are we?" Vaughn frowned and stuck out his tongue, still clearly in pain. "No, sir. That stuff tastes awful." He leaned toward Game and asked urgently, "Have you ever tried it?" Game raised an eyebrow, searching his memory. He couldn't exactly say yes. Vaughn twisted his face in disgust, rambling, "I'm telling you, sir, you wouldn't want to try it. Take my word for it. Back when I was a kid, whenever times were tough, my mom would catch a few and fry them up. It was like chewing on rubber." Game looked around, contemplative. "I'll keep that in mind," he said. "But I don't blame you for being jumpy. Where did all the laborers and merchants go this morning?" Vaughn answered immediately, his eyes darting toward the tightly shut houses. "Everyone who isn't joining the expedition is hiding, sir." Game frowned, surprised. "Hiding what for?" Vaughn explained nervously. "It's those goblins, sir. They cause a bit of a ruckus whenever they show up." Game stroked his chin, lost in thought. "Hiding their kids, hiding their wives too." Vaughn just blinked, muttering, "Yes, sir." Game gestured behind him, his voice calm. "Just a local saying. Let's keep moving. We don't want to get caught by them when they arrive." They walked up a jagged, dusty slope, pebbles scattering beneath their feet. Vaughn squinted careful as he asked, "Sir, I mean no offense, but is there something bothering you today?" Game tilted his head, a mysterious glint in his eyes. "Nothing in particular." "Why?" Vaughn hoisted his stick onto his shoulder, hesitating. "Well, with everything going on, you've been so quiet and calm." Game curled his lip with disdain. "Am I not always calm?" Vaughn quickly added, "You're too calm, sir. I mean, you always act calm, but when you're this calm, it means you're angry about something." Game pursed his lips, curious. "Is that so? And what else have you noticed?" Vaughn fell silent for a moment, then whispered, "You like to smile, sir." Vaughn quickly tried to justify himself when he saw the look of contempt on Game. "Don't look at me like that, you really do like to. You're always smiling. It's only when something is bothering you, or you're angry, or you want someone dead, that you stop smiling." Game looked up at the sky. "Is that right?" Vaughn nodded frantically. "Yes, sir." Game asked, "Anything else?" Vaughn pondered, then said, "If there is something truly making you that angry, it's when someone ruins your plans, or messes with your sister." Game went silent, looking up at the sky. After a while, he called out softly, "Vaughn." Game looked down, his expression darkening. "You're walking on thin ice." Vaughn frowned, confused. "What's thin ice?" Game let the silence sink in, then sighed, explaining, "It's an expression. It means you're doing something you shouldn't, because it's dangerous." Vaughn's jaw dropped, half impressed, half terrified. "You really know so many things, sir. But I'm sorry if I've said too much." Game turned to look at Vaughn, serious. "Just be more careful next time." He remembered Rosa's face, baring her teeth in pain. "But you're not wrong. There is an issue with my sister." Recalling Rosa's furious expression, a restless feeling washed over him. "My sister has been angry with me since the battle with Gelma." The image of her scolding him flashed in his mind. "She thinks we can't avoid a war with Veldora now, and she blames me for it." Vaughn offered advice in a gentle tone. "Sir, that's just who she is. She's been working hard to look after both of you. With the way you used your status to buy supplies and equipment for us, she must have faced quite a struggle. Plus, everything is getting so expensive. Do you know why? Word from our people is that external supply chains are shrinking. Something up top is interfering with food distribution." Game's voice dropped, serious and grim. "This is a problem. Groups like ours, Jacks and VGs, pay our people in food. If prices keep rising, maintaining control will become very difficult. Keep your ears open and report back to me once we reach the gathering spot." Vaughn walked faster, looking impatient, yet concerned. "Yes, sir. But you two grew up together, right? That can't be the only issue, can it?" Game frowned, clear annoyance on his face. "Not him, her fiancé." Vaughn was surprised. "Her fiancé," Game replied curtly. Vaughn remembered that careless guy. When he heard the confirmation, Vaughn's face went pale. "And he likes her." Game narrowed his eyes, his voice strained with barely contained irritation. "Vaughn, I just told you to watch your mouth, didn't I?" Vaughn trembled and gave a trembling military-style salute. "Yes, sir." Game sighed, his voice deep but resolute. "Regardless, it's true he does care for her. And even though he tries to act indifferent and aloof, he still gets quite emotional whenever he believes my actions might put her in danger." Vaughn asked eagerly, "Really, what does he say?" Game recalled the time he was scolded, the memory bitter. "He said I'm just another Zuko, a disgrace to the Greybonds, and that she'd be better off if I were dead, because I just cling to her without offering anything." Vaughn made a serious proposal. "Sir, just give the order. After we return, I'll go pay him a visit at night with a few of the others. We'll wear masks so nobody will find out." Game paused. He turned to look at Vaughn, then looked away, his serious expression clear. "Vaughn, you will not do that." Vaughn hesitated, continuing asking suspiciously, "Are you sure, sir? Can't we just beat him up a little to make sure?" Game smirked, a mix of contempt and empathy. "While I appreciate your enthusiasm and your concern for protecting my honor, leave him be. If something ever happens to me, I know she will be kept safe." Vaughn nodded, his face relaxing slightly. "Yes, sir. If you say so, I suppose I understand what he's thinking." Game shook his head in frustration. "I understand it too, but there are more pleasant ways to enjoy a final meal before heading to the front lines." The two came to a stop. Game looked ahead. "We're here." Before them, a thick crowd was swirling in motion. The two of them lined up to pass through the city gates when a voice rang out full of sarcasm. "We've arrived." In front of them, a massive swirling crowd is moving forward. As the two of them line up to head through the city gates, a voice rings out with a mocking tone. "Look who's standing over there with his arms crossed." With a stern expression, he asks, "So you've been busy, kid?" The boy, flustered, covers his mouth. "Isn't that your foster father?" Quay tightens his expression. "I did what had to be done." Quay speaks in a grave tone, watching him intently. "But was it the right thing to do? I don't mind you forming your own group, but don't you think you've crossed the line? You could have talked to the guards instead of letting your people risk their lives." The boy rushes to explain reassuringly, saying, "We already talked to the guards. Supervisor Kui frowns, annoyed. Oh, really? Then, how come no one told me about this? He looks calm. Voger has the support of the nobles. Do you really think they would let you interfere? He falls silent, frowning, arms crossed, looking down at Jem. Jem lifts his head slightly, looking at Kui with determination. He closes his eyes and sighs. You're right. Kui asks further, his expression uneasy. But let me ask you one thing, kid. Do you think he would be happy with what you've become? Jem bites his lip. Memories of his long-absent father surface. Jem's father. He furrows his brow. His gentle but sharp advice. I don't know what you will do in the future, but please don't disappoint him. By becoming one of those monsters, all right. Jem smiles and replies, What I will do in the future is make this world a better place. I promise you, and I promise him. Kui waves his hand, his facial muscles finally relaxing. Good. Just don't get yourself killed, that's all. Jem turns, calling out to him optimistically, Come on, Vaughn, let's go find them. The crowd gathers in the hall, footsteps and whispers blending into a chaotic chorus. Jem and Vaughn walk inside, their appearances sharp like two spearheads cutting through the sea of people. Jem's sharp eyes pause at a small detail. A guy is trying to sell items in his hand, mumbling as if to attract everyone's attention. He steps toward them, his attitude threatening. Go sell your junk somewhere else, or better, yet shove it down your throat. Another guy interrupts, his voice casual and mocking. Hey LG, you forgot the canteen and we're trying to find him one. That's a good price. Jem stares coldly, warning him, Use your head. That's a Barasa flask. Their shells are too soft and they'll rot in a few days. You need to find an Opasa flask. The guy rubs the canteen on his side. This has been with me through 2 expeditions, and it hasn't leaked a single drop, he replies conceitedly. Mon exclaims, half joking, half worried. They'll be dead in a week, watch. He waves to the group. He gently agrees. Yeah, but it won't be from lack of water. Do you see those soldiers? Mon. He points in a direction, his face serious. They're right there. In front of them is a dense crowd, a bustling, uneven wall of people. He puts his hands on his hips and asks, probing, Do you see the commander and Vaughn? The person opposite scratches his head, answering awkwardly, They'll be late. Living far away near the supervisor's quarters, someone runs over in a panic from the distance. Mon, we have trouble. Some of Voger's people are causing trouble with Jack's group. Jem asks urgently, worry showing on his face. How bad is the situation? The other guy gasps. Very bad. Most of Jack's people aren't even here yet. He quickly orders, Gather everyone who's already here. Jack stood by us and we owe him. He points to the ground in a panic, looking extremely uneasy. What do we do about the commander? We were supposed to meet him here. 2 of them turn their heads in the same direction. At once their gazes taut like a drawn bow. Looking elsewhere, he gasps, pointing with a trembling hand. Lord Sir, do you see that? That goblin, it has a 3-headed fox. 3 heads. Jem scolds him, slightly irritated. Vaughn, you really need to pay more attention to your surroundings. He asks, confused and suspicious. Why is that, sir? This is a neutral zone. Voger, or any other gang leader, wouldn't dare harm us. He frowns and sighs, unsatisfied, speaking to those watching them. Vaughn bows his head, looking around with a cowering posture, whispering, Is someone watching us? Jem hits him on the head, teaching him sternly, Don't look. If we show that we've spotted them, they might attack. They've been tailing us since we entered the gate. Vaughn asks in a low voice. Why haven't they attacked us yet? He coldly analyzes either. They're waiting until we're in the position they want, or we've already walked right into the path they wanted. He grimaces, sensing the danger drawing near. Sounds pretty bad, doesn't it? Jem is indifferent. What do you think we should do? Vaughn is confused, pointing to himself, his voice hesitant. Sir, are you asking me? He tilts his head, his gaze cold as he looks around. You're my subordinate. Your job isn't just to follow orders, but to think independently. I need to know that when I'm not around, the soldiers will be well taken care of. Jem smiles arrogantly. So, help me get out of this situation. Go on, I'll follow your orders. He is confused, his mind spinning from the sudden responsibility. My orders. He speaks in a low, clear tone guiding him. There are 4 people behind us, 3 on the right, and 3 more on the left. They're using standard pack hunting tactics to track us. There might be more in front or further away. Vaughn is flustered and trembling. That many, sir, you need to... I'm not... Jem stares, reassuring him. Calm down, Vaughn. Take a deep breath and think. Pretend this is a practice drill. He tries to breathe deeply. Vaughn, try to hypnotize yourself and relax. Relax. I need to relax. Vaughn listened carefully, moving cautiously, tracking the surrounding sounds. Every nerve tense, he turned his head and whispered, Sir, please follow me. Vaughn pulled Jem into the crowd. The 2 of them were like boats drifting through a sea of people. He leaned against someone's luggage, causing the person to cry out in confusion. Hey! The 2 finally shoved their way out of the crowd and breathed a sigh of relief. Vaughn tilted his head and asked in a low voice, Any sign of them, Sir? Jem glanced behind him and replied calmly, No. They've fallen back. They won't dare attack us while we're blending in with the goblin porters. Good thinking, Vaughn. He quickly looked around. Thank you, sir. Everything is progressing in the right direction, isn't it? He nodded slightly, his eyes sharp. I think so. We can make a run for it when we get close to where the soldiers are waiting. Vaughn urged. Look, it's right ahead, sir. I see the rock we told them to meet at. The 2 approached the rock. He looked around suspiciously. His lips pursed. Where are they? I don't see them. The boy's face turned pale and sank. Sir, they've been surrounded by a group of people inside. Haimo, carrying a sword on his shoulder, stood on the rock. If you're looking for your people, they aren't here to help you, you vermin. We have unfinished business between you and me. The boy's eyes were filled with hatred. His gaze was like an arrow shot straight at the 2 below. They huddled together, drawing their weapons from their sheaths, their eyes blazing as they glared at the mob surrounding them. Vaughn squeezed his eyes shut. Trembling, he shouted, Sir, where are the others? Jem gritted his teeth, his words as firm as steel. Doesn't matter. Remember what we practiced. Be careful, watch each other's backs, and we'll be fine. Haimo, standing on the high rock, raised his sword. Kill them. He suddenly remembered his barren past life. Jem walking past a bookstore, past a bus station. His gaze accidentally landed on a billboard. He wearily closed his eyes and turned away, as if trying to wipe away the restless feeling in his heart. The billboard clearly read, Enlist in the battle today. Citizenship through service. Arcadia Academy. Jem pursed his lips. His eyes opened again, his gaze suddenly turning solemn. Back to reality, he shouted, Now! Charging forward like a storm, he swung his staff wildly. Every strike made the air tremble. Jem's eyes were filled with a determination as hard as tempered steel. In his past life, he had truly joined the army, becoming a soldier forged in fire and bullets. Jem never stopped training his martial arts, day and night, sweat mingling with determination. He trained until the sandbag was shredded. The sound of his strikes still echoed in the air. But when a panting Jem turned his head to look behind him, all that was there was a cold, lonely void. In reality, Jem kicked out his strike, landing square in the face of the attacker rushing him. He spun around, swinging his spear to slash across the neck of another. Jem panted, glancing sideways to assess the situation. The boy's hands shook as he tried to parry the axe blows from 2 opponents. He frowned, his gaze locking onto another guy lunging at them like a wild beast with a dagger. In his past life, Jem had been armored. Carrying a gun into the battlefield, the instinct for survival was etched into every fiber of his being. He constantly supported his comrades, charging through gunfire to destroy the enemy. Tracers tore through the sky. Gunfire erupted relentlessly. The sound of thuds and roars echoed everywhere. On one dark, snowy night, Jem had been surrounded by enemy troops, a scene burned into his memory. At that same moment, Vaughn painfully dropped to one knee. His face covered in blood and dust. He gritted his teeth, his mouth twisted as he struggled to hold on. He quickly lunged forward, kneeing an attacker to clear a path for Vaughn. Jem helped him up. Their figures now merged with the memories of his past life. The two gripped their weapons, their movements in sync, like a pair of iron cords. They let out a fierce roar, bracing for the next wave of attacks. In his past life, Jem once stood alone in a sea of fire. A comrade laughed as he stepped into the aircraft cabin, turning to ask him, "Binny and Vandersteen, do you like this view? Get in. We don't have all day." Jem's eyes were weary then, but he still wore a determined smile. In the present, the two were panting at their feet, lay dozens of bodies stained red with blood. He scoffed, looked up, and said in a cold voice, "Hurry up, Haimo. What are you waiting for? I don't have all day." The boy was so angry, his face distorted, gripping his weapon tightly. Scene shift to another location. Rune grabbed the girl's hand firmly, her voice urgent and pressing. "Hurry up, Rafa, we're almost going to miss it." Rafa blushed, stammering shyly. "Rune, Before she could finish, she bumped into a tall man. The impact made Rafa whimper, and Gozak lowered his head, his cold gaze sweeping down at her. She frowned, her voice sharpening with a warning. "What are you looking at? Mind your own business." The man silently turned. He walked away with a nonchalant air, as if he hadn't cared at all. She laughed, striding alongside Rafa, speaking softly and teasingly. "Still looking to make friends everywhere, huh? Hurry up, we're almost there." The two held hands, weaving through the crowd, gathering toward the center of the square. Right there, Vaughn and Jem stood alone amidst the pile of bloodied corpses. Their bodies were battered, but their eyes still burned bright. The girl was stunned, her lips slightly parted in undisguised admiration. At that moment, Haimo and he lunged at each other. Their weapons collided, emitting a deep, resounding thud. Jem knocked Haimo's sword out of his hand. Haimo's eyes widened in surprise. His eyes filled with disbelief. He bit his lip, his expression a mix of anger and sorrow. Haimo roared, "Gema, you're like a brother to me, and you took him away." He stood with his hands on his hips, the corner of his mouth curling, in contempt. "Your brother is just a fool who can't see what's right in front of him. Don't be as stupid as he was. Get out of the way now." He furiously swung his staff, lunging into the desperate duel once more. In the distance, the boy was trembling, his wounds bleeding, but he still struggled to stand firm. Vaughn squinted, looking at the battle, unable to suppress the anxiety in his heart. "Sir," he bowed, opening the cloth bundle his hands whispering amidst his labored breathing. "Here it is." In Jem's memory, he once handed that item to Vaughn, his voice low and serious. "I'll handle it here. I'm counting on you, Vaughn." The boy squeezed the bundle and dashed away through the crowd, thinking to himself, "Don't worry, sir. I won't let you down." The battle between him and Haimo continued to intensify. The sound of the clash echoed through the air. Rune and Rafa watched, holding their breath until they forgot to even blink. She clenched her fist, shouting encouragement amidst the crowd. "That's great, beat him so cool." She tilted her head, her eyes wide, and asked, "Really isn't the guy with the long sword more your type?" Rune burst out laughing, her voice full of pride. "That's who I was talking about." Rafa pouted in reaction. "I knew it." Gozak's voice cut in. "Your taste is really twisted." She glared back at him. "Is that right? What would you know?" The mercenary crossed his arms lazily, saying, "He talks more than a bodyguard for a harem." Rune pointed a finger at him in anger. "Do you want to die?" Rafa the mercenary immediately advised, "Calm down." He then turned his head and asked, "Why do you think he'll win? He's just a poor miner who can't even afford proper clothes." Gozak curled his lips into a cold smirk. "That's what happens when you've been around gold and silver for too long. You start judging everything by the coin." In the middle of their argument, Van frowned slightly and tilted his head. "Rafa, do you hear that?" She fell silent, and Rafa's eyes widened, her cheeks flushing pink as her gaze fixed on Jem. She observed his every movement. The man's glowing golden eyes made Rafa freeze. Her voice trembled slightly, full of astonishment. She immediately pressed, What is it? Rafa, see, just like that. Rafa exhaled softly, her eyes following Jem as he dodged a deadly sword strike. That minor, he did that on purpose. Rune's eyes went wide. You didn't see it. No, I didn't see it. Do what on purpose? Right at that moment, his forehead slammed hard against Haimo's, creating a jarring thud. The boy staggered, not having time to react, before Jem seized the opportunity. Gripping his sword hilt tight, he pulled hard and threw him over his shoulder. A shrill scream echoed as Haimo crashed to the ground, moaning in pain. She was stunned and stammered. What? How did he? Gozak slowly explained. This was never a fight between equals. The guy with the spear was just observing how his opponent moved. He's always in control. Jem stepped forward, pointing the tip of his spear at the face of the young man trembling on the ground. His voice rang out coldly like a blade. You've lost. Drop the hatred. I'll spare you today. Jem glanced down with contempt, his gaze as cold as a knife. Are you finished yet? Haimo was covered in sweat, his face bloodied, breathing heavily. He bit his lip, his eyes still flickering with rebellion. Haimo let out a cunning laugh, a twisted, defiant grin. Not yet, but you are. The man who seemed defeated suddenly struggled to rise, his body trembling as he clutched his wounds, his eyes burning red. He laughed dryly, his hoarse voice echoing in the quiet space. They never learn from their mistakes. Jem curled his lip, his voice calm but cold as ice. My offer still stands. Let it go. He furrowed his brows and held his head high, arrogant. Why should I do that? Jem's gaze sank, his voice heavy as steel. Because I'm running out of reasons not to finish you. Haimo slowly stood up. His body was shaking, but his voice was still defiant. You're the one who needs to rethink things. He suddenly frowned, looking around in suspicion. What the hell is that sound? He smiled faintly, a gleam in his eyes. Our people are coming. A group of people rushed in from afar, shouting urgently, Leader! The rivals froze, their faces turning pale, as if they had seen a nightmare. They turned and fled amidst Haimo's desperate screams. What? No! Jem relaxed his shoulders and put his sword away. Haimo, thanks for the match. He gritted his teeth and grabbed his sword, his heavy, labored breathing still filling the air. The entire plaza sank into silence. Every eye followed the backs of the retreating losers. Gozak crossed his arms, his mouth curling slightly. There you go. Clever, isn't it? Rafa frowned, confused. What? He tilted his head and said slowly, The other guys used horns to communicate, while this one was fighting his accomplices already called for reinforcements. Rune's eyes went wide, and she exclaimed in admiration, The Reborn are that smart? Gozak glanced at her, a faint, fleeting smile. But clearly some people should think about that. Rune was speechless, standing still in the wind. A moment later, she tugged on her friend's arm. Let's go, Rafa. The fun's over. Rafa nodded, but her gaze lingered on the battlefield. On the other side, Jem's group embraced laughter, erupting after hours of life-or-death struggle. A radiant smile was on his lips, but his eyes still flashed with vigilance. She glanced at him one more time, then turned and whispered, We should go. Mon stepped forward, his voice deep and raspy. I've sent a few men to chase him. He waved his hand. Tell them to come back. Causing trouble while the goblins are here could spell disaster for us all. Vaughn rested his chin on his hand, thinking, and asked slowly, Is that why you didn't kill him, sir? Sir, Jem pouted, with a faint smile, his voice half joking. Sure, let's go with that. He looked up. Jem, why didn't you come meet us here? He sighed, rubbing his neck tiredly. A few guys from Burger were causing trouble for Jack's group, so we went to help. In the end, it was nothing major. Jem rested his chin on his hand, his eyes thoughtful. but enough to pull you away. I think something happened. James held up the horn in his hand when, hearing Vaughn's call, we came back as fast as we could. He squinted sarcastically. I assume you didn't leave Jack with all the junk, did you? He shook his head slightly. No. When Jack and Ham arrived, VG's people retreated. Jem cracked a smile, tilting his head to look. That's good then. His eyes suddenly met Gozak's, and the atmosphere became solemn. Jem asked quietly, What can I do for you? He smiled. I'm Gozak. I want to commend you for today's victory. I've participated in many campaigns and have never seen anyone fight as well as you did today. I'd like to discuss your fighting style with you. He tilted his head slightly, curiosity flashing in his eyes. Many campaigns, you say? He nodded. That's right, across many lands. Jem smiled and commanded loudly, Jem, go find some mushroom wine. We shouldn't be rude to our guest. They both laughed and shook hands firmly. He said, he and I have plenty more to talk about. In the first days of the Jorm era, the father of all fought against enemies from the void. He fell, and the world descended into chaos, but from a drop of his blood. A new god was born, Zera. It was she who gathered the fragments of Jorm. It was she, the god of death, who had to forge them again, and she was the one crowned the greatest general. After Jom was reborn, she reclaimed the land from the hands of the one who emerged from the void, and his minions, Bunghu explained. As the goddess of war, and as one who once stepped into hell to retrieve Jom's soul, we will enter hell to reclaim our inheritance. You may have heard that this expedition is to wipe out the Hiplings, and that is true, but that is not the whole truth. The truth is that there are ancient treasures lying right beneath our feet. Our treasures others were too afraid to claim in the past. He clenched his fists with determination. You are the lucky ones, the chosen ones today, because this expedition is not about hunting, it is about plundering. We are going down there to take back what belongs to us, and to make everyone rich, Bungo said, trying to boost everyone's morale. Whether you are a bogus burger, dark, or goblins, he raised his hands high, each and every one of you will become a part of history. Follow me. We will fight, we will conquer, Bungo shouted, and we shall be victorious. He declared it in the name of Jom, and the expedition began. The crowd below immediately roared in unison. Jom exclaimed, No, that has to be the worst speech I've ever heard, Gozak said, standing next to him, looking weary. Bunghu is not like his brothers. He is far greedier and more ambitious. Jom folded his arms, his face stone cold. He said, He is the son of the Jiraiya tribe chief. The man nodded firmly. That's right. This expedition is Bunghu's chance to prove he is stronger than his brothers. He rubbed his chin in thought. I see. Gozak, do you know what he is aiming for? The man broke into a sweat. I don't follow you, Jom said slowly. A prince doesn't voluntarily lead an expedition twice as large, as usual, and hire mercenaries from different races without a clear objective. And because we are going down, not up, there is definitely something down there that is important to him. At this, Gozak also thought quickly. I understand now. Once again, your words are insightful, Lep. I will speak to those I know. His eyes flashed with a complex gleam. Me too. The sooner we find out Bunghu's purpose, the better our chances of survival. Haimo collapsed to the ground. My lord. Vera looked at him angrily. Get out of my sight before I kill you. He quickly turned and ran away. Vera tilted his head and ordered Os, from today, Haimo is under your command. If he wants to lead again, let him prove he's worth it. He argued. My leader, he was only trying to do what was right for Gelma. He roared in anger. And if he succeeds, what then? If Bunghu finds out, what will happen? How many heads will the Prince of Jiraiya demand to atone for this? How many more of my people will I lose? I understand his feelings. Os, I feel the same, but now is not the right time. Os fell silent for a long time before asking, When will it be the time, my leader? What are we waiting for? Vera glanced coldly at Haimo for a long while, then broke into a wicked, sick smile. The levels are very deep, and many things lurk in the shadows. Oz, be patient. Our time will come. Switching to a new segment, Professor Goza's useful goblinoid identification class. Hello everyone, Professor Goza here. Some of you have asked about goblinoid society, and I am here to answer. In the world where Lep and I live, there are a few major races including goblinoids like us. Goblinoids originated from the Ansat Empire and split into tribes after the empire collapsed. Darks are the most advanced among the goblinoids. They were once merchants, warriors, and sailors, until they were conquered by humans. Dax are a warrior race known far and wide as knights and mercenaries for their bravery on the battlefield. Even though they are goblinoids, they did not belong to the Ansat Empire. The goblin tribe is the most common among goblinoids. They spend most of their time fighting their neighbors and each other. The strongest goblin tribe is Zira, the ones who subdued the Boggy. Burgers are famous for being skilled hunters and stealth experts, but be careful because their temper is as hot as their foul breath. Luckily, there aren't many of this type. At the lowest level of goblinoid society are the Bogey, but there is still a division among them. Blue Bogey are the aristocracy in Bogey society, acting as intermediaries between the goblin lords and other Bogey. Many Bogey have blue skin due to their goblin bloodline, but they are different from goblins in their smaller stature and hands that branch sideways instead of pointing upward. We the Boggy Greyborn are the lowest class. Our ancestors were once great mages, but now we labor in mines and caves, doing work that even other Boggy don't want to do. Our people have been oppressed by the Girano for generations, eventually becoming a servant class for them. Thank you all for commenting and asking questions about our people. We hope this class helps you understand more about goblinoid society. Feel free to ask more questions in the comments section below. On the table sat a plate containing a few things that looked like dried leaves. Level 1. San and Vara stood silently, their eyes filled with shock and confusion, as if they still didn't understand what had just happened. He furrowed his brows and turned his head away, his eyes filled with annoyance and disgust. San's hand slowly reached out his fingertips, gently touching the plate resting on the table. She didn't even bother to pay any more attention, and pulled the curtain to step outside. As soon as she pulled the curtain back, Vara froze. Vaughn was standing with his back to her, looking at something. Without a word, she strode over and grabbed him by the collar. Vaughn was startled and turned around quickly. Seeing Vara behind him, his smile twisted awkwardly. Vaughn was dragged away by Vara without a hint of mercy. He was dragged to a cave where the scent of herbs permeated the air coating the cliffs. She gestured with her hands, asking Vaughn if that worm and the mushroom leaves could turn into meat. He picked up 2. Mushrooms, one with a pointed tip, like a roof, the other round and plump like the moon, and signaled to explain. Not far away, San and his group sat around the table, all eating happily. After the meal, the whole group stood up, adjusted their gear, then lined up neatly and marched straight ahead. Level 2. While walking in the dim cave, Vaughn suddenly stopped trembling. He pointed forward, his eyes panicked. Just thinking about Vara made his whole body go cold. Vaughn was startled and immediately rushed toward a large rock to hide his heart pounding. He snuck away and stood behind a giant mushroom, lost in thought. Vaughn froze, his ears pricking up. A faint sound echoed from somewhere in the darkness. Turning around, Vaughn saw her, dragging a dead beast. After a few knife slashes, the beast was chopped into pieces. He sat down heavily on the ground, frowning at the pile of meat, then pointed at it with an expression of, I don't know why, but in the end, they stood by the pot of boiling water, tossed all the meat in to cook, and amidst the thick smoke, they looked at each other and smiled. Once the meat was cooked, they both picked up a piece, put it in their mouths, and took a bite. Suddenly, their eyes lit up in unison. The scene shifted to a group of people in armor, carrying weapons on their shoulders, silently marching up a steep, rocky slope. Having just finished eating, Vaughn gestured a warning that if anyone dared to eat, mistakenly eating rat meat would lead to poisoning and death. No sooner had he finished speaking Then both of them immediately jumped up shouting and chasing after a rat running around. They had only run a few steps before they froze. That rat had brought along a whole pack surrounding the two of them. He sighed softly, glanced at her. Her whole body was dirty, and then pointed toward the other side. Vaughn stood a distance away, silently keeping watch for Vara, while she bathed. After bathing, Vara felt completely relieved. She walked along smiling with deep contentment. Before she could react, Vaughn was slapped hard, on the back by Vara enough to nearly break him. He grew angry, pointing straight at her face, signaling that Vara was always hitting him to the point of near death. She was just as furious and swiped his hand away hard. Turning away, the two of them left in a huff, each in a different direction. The scene shifted again, a group of people walking silently in a level 4 wind. Vara sat at the table, her mood clearly not good, causing Dak and San to glance at each other and whisper in confusion. Her cheeks suddenly turned hot when the image of his face appeared in her mind. Then Vara bit her lip, recalling her impulsive actions from moments ago. Her eyes gradually lowered, her gaze turning silent, as if touching a nameless sorrow. In another corner, Vaughn crossed his arms, leaning against a rock, his face scowling with clear irritation. From afar, for a long time, she only bowed her head slightly and then silently walked away, her figure looking truly lonely. Gunn glanced toward him, raised his hand to point straight at his face, signaling that the person Vara liked was Vaughn. In a forest not far away, a roar echoed. A giant monster lunged forward, ferociously attacking her group. Vara gritted her teeth, channeled all her strength, and swung her blade. The blade flashed brightly before plunging deep into the monster's body. Vara frowned, her breathing heavy, trying to endure every sharp pain spreading throughout her body, even though she had given it her all. The monster still stood tall, completely unharmed. The very moment the monster raised its claws, a figure lunged from out of nowhere and pushed her away. She collapsed to the ground, head spinning, her whole body covered in the monster's saliva. She turned to look at Vaughn, her expression stunned. He chuckled, handing the knife back to Vara. She burst into laughter to the point where tears streamed down. When the monster collapsed, Vara just waved and smiled at Vaughn before turning to walk away. He held his hand up high, waving back, a smile still lingering on his lips, his gaze still following her retreating figure. Rack's eyes bulged, his teeth clenched tight, the muscles in his face tensed up as he struggled to endure the pain. His eyes rolled back, pupils exposed. His face was twisted in extreme pain. Game's gaze stopped at Jack's foot, which was bandaged and wounded. He stepped forward to console him. His foot will heal. Change the bandage and apply more NaHCO3 on the burns when the mist crystals turn blue to neutralize the acid. The person who was bandaging nodded. Yes, my lord. Game finished speaking, stood straight up, hands on his hips, his eyes sweeping across the surrounding space as if investigating. Looking at the monster's carcass lying still, he muttered in a low voice, "What a waste." He appeared quickly and reported, "My lord, I have asked, but the healers refused to come. They said that taking care of the Greyborn is not their job unless a noble requests it." Game heard this, and his face turned grim. He crossed his arms and frowned. 2 months, 4 floors, more than 100 dead. Those old men playing war games using these youths as pawns. Some things never change. Vaughn nodded. Yes, my lord. But conversely, he shook his head rhythmically. He found it hard to understand, so he spoke up. My Lord Gill said the supervisor wants us to start harvesting. They don't want to waste any more time on the injured. Hearing this, he went silent, his eyes looking off into the distance, lost in thought. His gaze landed on the group of injured people. Each person was carefully bandaged. That's right, it's time to collect our treasure. The bogey were busily digging tunnels non-stop. Most gray bogies were small and unsuited for life in the caves. I used to wonder why the goblin made them miners. He remembered when he was young the first time he stepped into the cave. Finally, I discovered it was because of the beautiful mist crystals that the bogey used for light. The white-haired old man slowly lifted the blue stone, placing it ever so gently into the box, as if afraid of breaking it. In the dim light, a bogey jumped up slightly, hugging a pile of blue stones to its chest. And the world on the surface uses them to supply energy for magic, if they have corrosive properties toward non-magical creatures, but don't affect the gray bogey. The group of bogey enthusiastically played, passing the blue stone to each other, laughter echoing throughout the cave. With the innate magical ability they had, they could handle the toxic crystals without any fear. So here we are in the mines where Gira sent us. The bogey held a hammer intently. It tapped rhythmically against the blue stone. Sparks flew, but they still needed to be purified and made safe to use a long and costly process. The sound of knives clashing echoed. They slit the monster's belly, until a new supply was found. Fluid from the monster's belly flowed out. The first expeditions discovered that the hip links naturally refined metal ores, and mixed crystals into the safe form they used to build nests. His gaze swept over the heap of monsters on the ground. Since then, expeditions were often organized under the guise of clearing the mine of threats, but in reality it is harvesting the refined crystals. Game was silent, quiet, as if pondering. Initially I heard that hiplinks used to live in isolation, not interfering with each other, but after the great hunt began, there was no turning back. Now both sides kill each other the moment they meet. What a waste! From above, the fat man shouted, his voice echoing down below. Be careful with those things, you idiots. They are worth more than your dog lives. In the distance, he and the other man approached, looking quite annoyed. God, I hate that guy. He leaned down, opening a bag for someone, quickly putting something inside, then turning toward Rack. How bad is the situation? He frowned slightly, his tone sounding regretful. 10 people, kid. We lost 10 good people. The man beside him closed his eyes and sighed. They died because we were too hasty. Even a child could have foreseen the ambush if we had scouted more carefully. Hem rubbed his chin, his expression darkening, and he nodded. That's right. The thing I can't understand is why. It's not just because of these stones, let me tell you. Game lazily pointed his finger in another direction. Perhaps he knew. Just as the words were spoken, the figures of Virgil and Os slowly appeared, before everyone's eyes. Rack glanced down, his gaze full of suspicion, only to see the blue veins on his arms bulging. Vac lifted his head, his voice deep as he advised Hem. I understand how you feel, but remember the treaty. We are allies now. Seeing the surprised expression on his face, he smiled slightly. Vac, are you still angry about my test? How many years has it been? The man was annoyed and snapped back. A test you made my closest brother turn against me. I had to kill him because of you. Virgil still kept a smile on his lips, then spoke up gently. Rack, you still don't understand. If I hadn't, if you give him a chance, anyone else would do the same. It's no surprise that your subordinates keep betraying you. No sooner had he finished speaking than he exploded, lunging forward to kick the man in the face, but was immediately blocked by the others. Leader, don't do that. He's right, he said. This isn't worth it. He's just trying to provoke you. If you attack him, Bungu will execute you. He pouted, his eyes sweeping over them with contempt, then shook them off. Fine. He turned his back and walked away decisively. I'm going to go check on the troops. You take care of that kid. Watching him leave, the man sneered, mocking him loudly. Come find me whenever you want, Jack. I'll always welcome you. Without even looking back, Jack raised his middle finger at Burger. Only then did Jem step forward and speak up. So, aside from trying to annoy us, why did you come here? Is there any other reason? He leaned in and whispered in his ear. Truth be told, my intel finally found the reason behind this hasty expedition, Jem asked suspiciously. What reason? After a moment of contemplation, he recounted a war between siblings to inherit the leader's position. I don't need your intel to know that. Burger paused for a moment, closed his eyes and continued. Of course, but does your intel say how Bungu plans to win that war? And the reason why this expedition is moving at such a rapid pace, your intel knows." He tilted his head toward the sky. "It wasn't easy, and it cost a lot of money, but yes, they found it." Jem looked skeptical. "Why?" he asked. "You already know the location of a legendary magical weapon once used by SH. Walking beside Vaughn, he kept rambling non-stop. "So, when are you going to tell us about why the boss is so angry?" Vaughn frowned, rubbing his temples to ease his headache. "Gun, I already told you I wasn't there. Jem is the one who knows for sure. Want to know why he's angry? Go ask him yourself." Gun playfully and gently touched his elbow. Come on, Vaughn, you're the one he dotes on the most. You must know something. We're just worried about him, you understand, right?" Vaughn couldn't help but laugh out loud. "Is that so?" Gun pouted, stammering as if he didn't know what to say. He interrupted, shaking his head, showing he understood. "I knew it." Gun shrugged as if he didn't care. "All right, fine. I was just curious, and a little worried that he might decide to get angry at the goblins and drag us into trouble." Mon stood behind them, looking down, trying to interject into the conversation. "That sounds ridiculous. Is that what you're worried about? From what we've seen, he finishes every war, doesn't he?" He furrowed his brow, his face twisted in annoyance. "Hey, mind your own business, Mon." After that, Gun turned to him with a cunning smile. "So he's hiding something from you, huh, Vaughn? It's quite pathetic. The bosses prefer the grumpy old man like Jem over kids. Like you." He immediately grabbed Gun by his two hair buns. Before he could react, he said, "Shut your mouth. The last thing we need is for you to spread more rumors." Gun pushed his hand away forcefully. Mon raised an eyebrow and spoke firmly. "Don't worry, Vaughn." He puckered his lips to blow a kiss in a teasing manner. "I'm sure your beautiful girlfriend will comfort you when you're crying on her gorgeous lap." While they were joking around, a powerful force suddenly struck Gun from behind. He was startled and turned around in a panic. Looking up, Gun saw Raka behind him with a cold expression. "You gray goblins, can you ever—" "Shut your mouths. This is a scouting mission, not a wild berry picking trip." Vaughn stepped forward, smiling awkwardly to break the tension. "Listen, Raka, I'm sorry. He just likes to ramble. I didn't mean anything by it." He frowned, leaning down, his voice rising as if to threaten them. "If this whole group gets discovered just because you lot can't shut your traps, I'll personally throw you to the hippos. To be eaten." As soon as Zoka left, a voice spoke up from behind. "Don't let him bother you too much, kid. Burger folks like Zoka are born grumpy." Ban and Gozak stepped forward and spoke at the same time. "Kid, you know that feeling when you have an itch you can't scratch. Burger people are always like that. If I had to smell Ban all day, I'd be grumpy too." The old man rolled his eyes and cleared his throat as if to warn them. "Hey, the scouting unit is moving ahead. Let's go." The whole group entered the forest, where jagged rocks were interspersed with patches of pink grass. The group stood there in silence until he spoke, breaking the heavy atmosphere. "Vaughn, I have to admit this 5th floor is more beautiful than I thought. It's hard to believe there's a place like this underground." The scenery ahead was like a fairy tale. He stared at it full of questions. "What are those?" Mon stared intently at the black leaves rolling on the ground. "Spas. This floor is crawling with packs of spas like that. Jem already told me." Gun raised his hand to rub his stomach, staring with a hungry gaze. "Can we eat them?" He glanced over as a reminder. "You can try, but Jem said I will trample anything that gets near their nest." After hearing that, he gave up the idea. "Forget it, better not mess with them." Vaughn turned full of curiosity and asked him, "Mr. Gozak, it'll crush anything that gets close to the herd." After hearing that, he gives up on the idea. "Yeah, better not mess with that." Vaughn turns to him full of curiosity and asks, "Mr. Gozak, how much further until we head back to the rendezvous point with the company?" He glanced behind him while pointing. It was hard to gauge the distance in this strange place, but I trust the meeting point is in that direction. What do you think, Ban? Ban held the wooden box in his hands, lost in thought. The box counted, saying we had taken 10,230 steps to reach the furthest point in the windy zone. We've taken 3,478 steps on the way back so far. I guess if we just follow the stream ahead, we've got about 6,000 steps left to go. As soon as he finished, the group huddled together, each one chiming in, "Your boss's box can talk." "It doesn't talk, kid. It just counts and tells me how many steps we've taken." Rocka stepped forward with a powerful stride. "All right, let's keep moving." With that, he led the way, while the kid poked his head up and interjected, "Mind if I ask, sir, where did you get that box?" "That," he looked at him and explained, "I took it when we were fighting the Pinkskins in the east." The kid was full of confused question marks. "Pinkskins what?" Ban suddenly spun around. His eyes widened and his jaw dropped like he wanted to say something, but he changed the subject. "What? Why are you?" "No, that's not right. Your tribe isn't allowed to leave this place, are they?" He said, his face looking a bit awkward as he bowed his head. "Sorry about that." The kid waved it off with a smile. "It's fine." "No, it's not." Ban wagged a finger with a mischievous wink. "Why are you saying it's fine? That's a big problem, kid. How do you stand living underground for so long? No sunlight, no sky. I've only been down here a short while and I'm already going crazy." They walked for a bit. Then they saw it above them, a skylight. "Well, there were several skylights actually. But I know what you're after," he said, smiling and lifting his head with full confidence. "One day we will be free. But until then, we have to be strong enough to protect our freedom. That's what Sir Leps always says." He rubbed his chin and let out a soft grunt. Gozak said that guy wasn't bad, but he didn't think much of him. "Maybe I should take another look at your big brother," he mused. The kid tilted his head, flashing a bright grin. "Just go meet him and talk, you'll see." "Can you tell me more about the Pinkskins and the Drifts?" Whenever he mentioned humans, Ban looked down on the Pinkskins as idiots, filthy creatures living in the east like insects. You couldn't kick a bush in the east without hitting a pile of Pinkskins. He recalled the disastrous battle, a lingering pain rising in his heart. "We were just fighting them not long ago. A group of people covered in mud stole some of our pigs, so we went over to settle the score. As the battle was going on, these people in robes showed up, a bunch claiming to be druids, and intervened to stop the fighting. They stood there looking straight at Ban. They were like a bunch of monks, always worrying about making peace. That was their law. They don't fight unless they're defending themselves, and always look for peaceful settlements." Returning to reality, he pointed straight at the wooden box. "Anyway, I saw a drift with this box, and he said he'd give it to me if I stopped fighting. So I thought, why not?" Ban lifted the wooden box, his eyes contemplative. "That was the best deal I ever made. You wouldn't believe it, but this box has saved my life, more times than I can count." After hearing the story, the kid behind him went quiet, then exclaimed in awe, "That sounds wonderful." Thinking of the black-robed group, he nodded. "It really is. If your tribe ever regains its freedom, and you happen to meet the peaceful Pinkskins in the east, respect their religion and traditions. They will respect you back." He walked ahead, glancing back. "That won't happen. The Republic of Brazilium has killed almost all of them already." Ban suddenly remembered. "Right, damn it." Vaughn, not understanding, spoke up with a curious look. "What is it I see?" He remembered the uniforms those humans wore, a bunch of skirt-wearers, arrogant always, marching everywhere with their flags. They set fires and burned everything down. They burned the temples of every land they occupied.